All right, this is the Earth. This is where we live. We don't know how long we've been on the Earth. Humankind started keeping records about 5,000 years ago, 4,700 years ago. Before that, it's guesswork. We look at rocks, we break them open, we ask them for a date, we look for a printed date in the rock. There is none. We use our telescopes, we look at the stars. We use index stars and what do they call them? Candle light star. We go, that's that far away. We go, this is how the Earth formed. We have this whole story. And this story, everybody feels like is really spot on because the scientific academic complex and the media work hand in glove in teaching you about this reality. How we got here, what it is, how the universe came to be, how the Earth came to be, man is just animals, mutated chimpanzees, etc. The problem with this story is it's relatively new on the scale of time, especially if you believe in like 4.5 billion years, which who would believe in that? But if you believe, 4,000, 5,000 years of humankind, this is about 200 years. So, 1/5 of the time that anybody's even been here. We teach the story and everybody believes it is gospel truth. Well, there's huge problems with it. And the standard model is falling apart. It's like the movie Death Becomes Her. The girls, they can't die, but their faces are falling off. And it's just like, this is the standard model. Ugh. Forget about the paleontology. Forget about the death poses. Forget about where the water came from for the glaciers. Forget about what everybody's ever reported about this thing. Forget about the geologic catastrophic formations everywhere. Forget about all that stuff. Billions and billions of years, you're just an animal. It's a meaningless universe. Well, we're going to show you really quick. We're going to start this off by showing you how the Earth was made. Okay? It's going to take about 30 seconds.
This episode travels back in time to investigate the greatest geological mystery of all. The birth of the Earth.
Earth birth.
Scientists explore how our planet first formed from the dust of the solar system. How molten rock solidified to land. How our oceans filled with...
This is the official narrative. This is what you're told. Chaos. Fire. They opened up the rocks and they looked in there and they saw all of this. They could see in the rocks. Started by fire 4.5 billion years ago. Interesting idea. We see water everywhere. Where did the water come from? Well, the official narrative is that comets delivered the water. So we got this beautiful blue sky, beautiful blue planet. I'm going to rewind it a little bit. Let me mute this here for a second. We've got this look at this thing. The atmosphere, beautiful blue planet. Look at that thing. But nope, it formed in fire, and then the water came later by comets. Delivery from the aliens. Water, did somebody order a bunch of water? We need a whole bunch of water. Here's your water. Alien water. Comets. Where did the water come from for the comets? Nobody knows. How did the water form and then shoot across the universe and land on the Earth? 4.5, but nobody knows. But hey, the rocks, right? You gotta trust the rocks. But what does the Bible say? This is the official narrative, right? Fire, crash, heat, explosions, right? Big bang. The universe exploded into existence. That's how things work. Things explode into existence and then get better. So what happens? Go blow up your car and then watch it turn into the Earth. It's just how it works. Explosion, fire, chaos. What does the Bible say? Genesis 1. If you haven't read this book, it's a good book. Bestseller. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Bereshit bara Elohim. We're going to do a study on the Bereshit prophecies. Unbelievable. The human being cannot write this book. It's the Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim haaretz. It's 7 words. It's got Jesus in it. It explains this whole thing. I think there's simulation implications in there. It is not in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It's Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim aharetz. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And just that line alone, I could teach on it for probably 4 hours. It's unbelievable. Anyways. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Kind of like this, right? They got that right. Dark, water on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, I don't know if any of you like meditate listening to scripture or love poetry or singing, any of these kind of things. It's shown, it's scientific fact that music calms the spirit, the voice, maybe not my nasally voice, but just the articulation of words is creating life. It's creating information. It's beautiful. So the Bible says that God spoke over the face of the deep, right? And the official narrative says this. The face of the deep happened, alien comets were delivered, but before that, it was just fire and destruction. Chaos and fire and madness. No one could, who could ever survive this? But life came out of it, whatever. You believe whatever you want to. It's the opposite story. I know I've said this before, but I need to paint this picture to you. The people who brought you the story that you believe about there was no flood, there was no creation, it's just all this huge happy accident, whatever, they looked at the Bible and they read the Bible, I imagine, because just looking at it wouldn't get you very far. And they said, what does it say? God speaks over the waters of the deep. Okay, an explosion and fire. Do it. The opposite. This is the opposite, the whole story, right? It's just what it's always the opposite. Oh no, I hope these don't need to reload. Charles Lyell created geology. Now, I know this seems like kind of a jump from what I'm talking about to Charles Lyell, but this is very important. And we're going to cover barrettes here in a little bit. So I'm realizing after I'm 10 minutes in and I haven't gotten anywhere, there's probably going to be a 2 or 3 teaching series. 2 or 3 series teaching. I don't think I can do this. I've got too much to cover. And I need to dive into this. And this is the kind of thing you can send to your atheist friends, or I've got a bunch of scientist evolutionists in here. This is very important information. Charles Lyell worked with James Hutton and influenced by James Hutton and worked with Charles Darwin. These guys were all contemporaries. Well, Hutton was before them. They wanted to explain this reality in a way that was the opposite or not consistent with the Bible. They literally wanted to tell you they wanted to look at the reality that was created by God and the historical account by the author of creation. And they wanted to workshop a way to tell you how this reality happened that isn't what the Bible says. This is literally their intention. And I've covered this a ton on my TikTok lives. We get into the X Club. We get into intentionally trying to get away from the theocracy of the Catholicism, which I don't support at all. And I understand why they wanted to crawl out from under that theocracy. Having a king and a priest never works because of conflict of interest, and it ends up being a theocracy. Anyways, they wanted to get away from that. So Lyell saw himself, I don't use Wikipedia very often, but this is actually a letter I can find if I wanted to dive down and do it. He wrote a letter to his buddy, R. Grove. He saw himself as the spiritual savior of geology. I'm going to save geology. Darwin needs a lot of time. Evolution needs a lot of time. The Bible says 7,500 years ago. Let's go deep time. The Bible says 7,500 years. Let's go 75 billion. Who cares? The opposite. The spiritual savior of geology. Freeing the science from the old dispensation, which means the old time period, the empire, the intellectual empire, the mode of thought. Lyell was going to be the spiritual savior of geology, and he was going to free science from Moses. Oh, that dastardly Moses, who people think isn't even real. They just he's not even real. Like, the dude writes a book 3,500 years ago, and this guy 3,000 years later goes, I gotta debunk Moses. That's my goal here. So why do you believe what you believe? Because Lyell and his cronies had a ton of sway. And by the time Huxley got involved and literally controlled the cooperation between government and science and education, he brought in a secular worldview in the Age of Enlightenment. You know, the Age of Enlightenment had already been starting to take off, and now they had a way to explain this reality without God. And it was deep time and uniformitarianism. Slow, steady processes over deep time. And Lyell pushed this. Before this, basically everybody believed in the flood. Basically everybody. Every tradition, every culture, they believed in a version of the flood. Because epigenetically, this memory of our ancestors was passed down. It was passed down. They would tell it, and then they'd move to different countries and get different languages, and they would tell a different version of the story. Some of the details change, but guy builds a boat, saves the animals, saves the humans, whatever. That's what they did. This is the story that they told. I'm actually going to diverge here and show you this. Why are flood myths so common in stories from ancient cultures around the world? This is from Big Think. This is an anti-creation website. If you don't believe me, go watch Bill Nye saying creationism isn't appropriate for children. That was Big Think. World mythologies are full of floods, plagues, resurrections, trickery, and patricide. These are the main theories for why structural and symbolic similarities exist. Regardless of which theory is true, they shed light on the beliefs we share today. As anthropologist Levi Strauss, interesting. That's Levi. He was an anthropologist and a gene maker. Structural study of myth. Maybe it's a different guy. I don't know. There is an astounding similarity between myths collected in widely different regions. The word is astounding similarity between myths collected in widely different regions. From the city-states of ancient Greece to the hunter-gatherer tribes of the Amazon rainforest, cultures where everywhere have preserved suspiciously. Here's a couple some good adjectives. Astoundingly similar and suspiciously similar. It's like they didn't have the internet or email and they just tell the same story. Doesn't make any sense. About heroes slaying monsters. Yep, Bible. Talking animals. Yep. Playing tricks on each other. Jealous, usually male siblings fighting to the death. Especially common in world mythologies are stories about world-ending floods and the chosen individuals that managed to survive them, like the biblical Noah and Shittim. You think I'd really like that word? The Ark Builder in the Epic of Gilgamesh, a text thought to be even older than the Abrahamic religions, which we believe that Moses and Abraham, that was Abraham was teaching the family story all the way down and wasn't formalized until Sinai. And interestingly, the cuneiform tablets actually have Hebrew in them. So the idea would be they were speaking Hebrew, they were telling their language, Sumeria went off, they chiseled it in stone. So when they say it predates the Abrahamic religions, it just means they wrote it down in stone first. But anyways, Aztec mythology, a man named Tata and his wife Nene carve out a cypress tree after being warned of coming deluge by the god, this guy. While Manu, the first man in Hindu folklore, was visited by a fish that guided his boat to the peak of the mountain. The list goes on. All this begs the question, why is there such astounding similarity between the oral traditions of geographically separated peoples? Just you say that right there and you immediately go, well, maybe their new story sucks, because this is a good question. And this is, if I can wrap this up tonight, you could ask, this astoundingly, the geology astoundingly corroborates the story of a global massive flood. Why does this happen? Paleontology astoundingly corroborates the story of a global massive flood. History amazingly tells the same story. Meteorology, it tells the same. Why do all of these things line up? Why do they line? It doesn't make any sense, because clearly they were stupid. They were wrong. Why would this all fit together with one theory that matches everything we see and everything we know? But it's certainly not because our theory's wrong, because if we know anything, we have 4.5 billion years, because it takes a long time for matter to create consciousness. It takes a long time for disorganized, proto-life-building chemicals to assimilate DNA and start printing something, and then you get the octopus later. They actually said that happened very fast, which they can't. That's also astounding. How do the octopuses so advanced? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, yeah, they need the time, basically. Hand in glove, they need the time. And if you look at the Grand Canyon, or you look at the Missoula Floods, and you go, well, look at the size of that thing. that looks like a flood. Or it looks like a river trickling for a billion, zillion, million monopoly money years. Which is it? Well, we're going to go with the former, because we want to free science, aka the human mind, from Moses. Gotta get him away from that dastardly book of Genesis. Anthropologists, psychologists, and archaeologists have spent years looking for an answer. We just can't find an answer. What could be the answer? This begs the question. Why is there such an astounding similarity between the oral traditions of geographically separated peoples? All the king's horses, I say that all the time, all the king's horses and all the king's men. Anthropologists, psychologists, and archaeologists have spent years looking for an answer. I've got an answer. A global flood. Yep, they weren't stupid. They were telling history. What would corroborate this idea that the history being told to us matches the global flood? Well, when did civilization begin? The earliest writing we know of dates back to around 3000 BCE. Okay, I don't have time to go over this fully, but the Septuagint genealogy translates to the earth being 7,500 years old and the flood happening 5,200 years ago, 3,200 BC. So you have 200 years, according to the Septuagint non-Masoretic manipulated text. It's a whole other video we can do. 200 years after the flood, they started writing these things down. There was a big old flood. We all came from the flood. We're in Mesopotamia. Right when they say, what could possibly account, what would account for the first writing coming straight out and saying, yeah, also a global flood, that happened 200 years ago, is a big deal. What could explain this? Anyways, so I got to go back to Charles Lyell, the spiritual savior of geology, freeing science from Moses. Okay, so it's literally a worldview. It's a belief system rooted in disbelieving in the Bible. That is why we believe what we believe today. Why when I make a top 5 video and 150,000 people see it, we're hoping for 1 million. I want everybody to get this information. Dan McClellan makes a response video. It didn't happen, but it's academia. Like, dude, you got 9 degrees on your wall. Of course you believe the official scientific narrative. And of course, they're pushing the thing that the people who built the scientific narrative in opposition to Moses, the way that they interpret the data. But we interpret the data based on our worldview. I'm a young earth creationist. I believe that God created this reality, just like he said in the Bible. That's a historical account. So my bias interprets it this way. My bias is this information is very compatible with my bias. And it's semi-compatible with that bias, but also there's major, major problems. The truth is, at the end of the day, we don't know, but this theory of the flood sure wraps up a lot of these things with a nice little bow. But why would somebody not want to believe in the Bible? Well, the book that you don't believe in tells you. That's pretty good. We're going to write a book that, as the millennia peel away, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, 0, 1,080, 2,000, the information gets better. Oh, we found water under the sea, or under the crust of the earth. Oh, that's where the Bible said it came from. That's really cool. Oh, we found, all of these animals wiped out in the flood. That's where that came from. All the history. All these things that corroborate with it. So what would cause people to go, I don't want to believe in that? And in the same book, in the very same book that said what happened, it said in the distant future, 2,000 years from now, people would not believe this. And it even says why. The book that said what happened also said that we would deny it today and why. That's a pretty good prediction. I get a lot of, what kind of predictions have you made? Well, Paul here, I believe, I'm not great with the books after the Gospels, who wrote what, but Paul wrote a lot of them. He goes, yeah, well, it's Peter maybe. Makes sense it'd be Peter. Anyways, doesn't matter. I need to research that more. The idea is him saying, in the future, this is going to happen. And that's a remarkable prediction. Okay. Dear friends, my second letter to you, I've written both of them as reminders to stimulate you to wholesome thinking. I want you to recall the words spoken in the past by the holy prophets and command given by our Lord and Savior through your apostles. Above all, it's a big deal. Above all means pay attention, right? Pay attention. If you're on TikTok, come over to YouTube. Above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. Yep, this is what causes you to disbelieve in the flood. It's not the evidence, it's scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, "Where is this coming?" he promised. Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. Uniformitarianism. He predicted uniformitarianism. He predicted uniformitarianism. But they deliberately forget. I love this. Bill Nye says, occasionally I meet people that say they don't believe, well, deny that they say they don't believe in evolution, but of course they do because it's so self-evident. Of course they believe in evolution. It says specifically here, they deliberately forget. So let me tell you this, in the words of Bill Nye, you don't believe in the global flood because you deliberately forget it because of either academic indoctrination or your own evil desires. Well, let me tell you, there's more middle ground than you think. You can also be a sinner and love God because we're not perfect. So if I read the book and I said, well, if I sin ever again, I'm done, maybe I would want to disbelieve the book too. But salvation is for everybody. Okay. They deliberately forget long ago by God's word, the heavens came into being. God spoke this reality into existence. God spoke this. You want to talk about the opposite of a bang? Like I almost thought about like banging the microphone, like showing you an explosion versus speaking, and so you could feel the difference. God spoke this reality into existence. One of the million reasons, probably 200 reasons that I really believe the Bible, and I think it's aging so well. I think we're in an information-based reality. Information is language. This language is spoken into existence, very consistent with everything from simulation to cymatics, etc. So God speaks this reality into existence. They deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being. In the beginning was the Word was with God. Everything that was in the Word, everything that was made by the Word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. Everything that was made by the Word. John 1, close to that anyways. So we got this idea. God speaks His Word, He creates this reality. They deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. Remember this? They deliberately forget that the earth was formed out of water, by water, and what else was it? Oops. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire. So that's coming. The fire's coming, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction. How about that? The book that reported this thing, that recorded this event, that told you how it happened, also said that you would forget that it happened deliberately because of your own evil desires. Now, thinking of Charles Lyell as the spiritual savior of geology, what was your intention? What kind of skeletons did you have there in the closet? Chuck? It wasn't because it wasn't all around them and everything. It was just, we're not doing that anymore. We're divorcing from it. Okay, so 2 Peter 3 is important. This uniformitarianist view, slow changes over deep time, was debunked. Because guess what? The theory sucked and it was totally wrong. The idea, everything that's formed is just slow. That big of a canyon, yep, just trickle, long time trickle. Meanwhile, there's huge mudslides and we see all these catastrophes always, but they're like, nope, slow, steady processes. Well, this was so strong. This idea pervaded the intellectual headspace, the intellectual capital of the scientists so strongly in 100 years. They all so gravitated to this idea. They just couldn't wait. They loved this idea. It's the best thing ever. That when J. Harlan Bretz, this handsome man, proved the Missoula floods, the giant ice dam flood. We're going to cover some of the scope, the scale of this thing here for a little bit. This is going to be the geology portion. I should probably mark this off. It was history, theology. Now we're doing the geology of it. This dude shows them exactly what happened. Hey, check this out. It's a huge flood. And they're like, nope. Nope. He's like, yeah. Gets even worse than that. This is there's going to be a little bit of, it's going to be like Luke being colorful and animated and controversial, and then it's going to be nerdy science talk. So if you're into that, you're in the right place. If you're not, it's going to be that anyways. This is from a lecture called Nerd Night in Vancouver, Cataclysms on the Columbia. This is fully secular geologic lecture series for like university level students. I'm going to play it on 1.25. We're going to watch about 3 or 4 minutes of it in their real time, so probably like 2 and 3 minutes. I want you to watch how pervasive the worldview, the philosophy of uniformitarianism was in how we interpret the data. This is so very important. You can look, if you've ever done any like forensic crime scene investigation research, or even watched some of those like, crime shows, whatever, you think you saw something, you think you believe something, your memory's fuzzy, you had adrenaline, you can get manipulated, the person was taller or shorter, and like this, and you get all these details sorted out. Because when you're biased in the moment, you're going to interpret the data differently. The interpretation of the Missoula floods is one of about 20 catastrophic mistakes that secular scientists have made by dogmatically holding on to a presupposition worldview, a biased based interpretation of the data. That's happening with the Big Bang. It's going away. They're going to laugh at anybody ever believed it. They're going to keep doing this, all these things. They're just going to keep falling away, and they're going to go, they believed it. Just like 100 years from now, seriously. You're in here, you're an atheist, you're secular minded, you went through the university, whatever, you got 5 degrees, you're Dan McClellan. You don't think that in 100 years they're going to look back at today and go, they believed that. That's funny. But then you just don't believe in history and reality, because this is what always happens. We don't have it figured out now. We have a bunch of people who tell you they figured it out and you can't question them. Cue the tragic and then triumphant story of J. Harlan Bretz, who broke science by proving to them that the thing that they clearly saw happened and their bias was clouding their judgment.
To the time of J. Harlan Bretz, a young assistant professor up at the University of Washington. Here is his field vehicle as he went out into eastern Washington. U.S. Geological Survey gave it to them. Standard graduate students there. They all wear hats in those days. We're a lot better dressed than geologists today in the field. But wherever he went, he saw these gigantic valleys that had been carved out. It sure looked like they were carved out by water, but where is the water today? Secondly, he went to places like Dry Falls, which is a state park out in central Washington. And it looks as if this was a site of a large waterfall in the past, but there's no water today. And here's a D. Molinar painting of what it probably looked like in the past, as you can see here. And he saw that. And then he saw these gigantic gravel bars that were out on the rivers today. And how were all of these produced? Well, they were produced by big floods. And then I love this one. This is at West Bar, just outside of Wenatchee. And you can see all of the ripples that are in here. And we can take the wavelengths formed in between those ripples and look at the size of the class of the particles, the gravels and the cobbles that are in there. And then we can back calculate velocities. Vic Baker, famous geologist I'll talk about in a few minutes, did that. And he was calculating velocities up 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. That's unheard of. And so he was seeing all of these landforms. And out in the center part of the state, he would see where all of the geology was all scoured down, all the soils were scoured away down to the bedrock, the Columbia River basalt. And then there were little islands of loess that were left. The Palouse loess, L-O-E-S-S, this is windblown silt, that is all over eastern Washington. And they had been scoured away. What caused them to be scoured away like this? And then you can see in this particular area here, there is the loess and the uplands, and here is the scoured out areas here. And then there were some very small little lakes that were scoured out, and they were scoured out by little tornadoes and these high velocity floods that came through. We call them Coke Lakes, K-O-L-K. And so you saw Coke Lakes scoured out, bedrock everywhere. And then when you go down into the Columbia River Valley, this is Washington, this is Oregon, this is I-84, and the Columbia River is deep down in here. And you can see where water levels got up to this point. That's all loess from there on up. This is all Columbia River basalt that is exposed down there. And you can just follow it all up and down the whole system. And so he saw all of these features, and in 1923, he put together a first paper, and he called it the Spokane Flood. And he said that a large flood came down through Spokane, created the channel's cablanche, as you can see here. There is Wallula Gap, and he described this. Now, the detractors of the day said, where did the water come from? Number one. And number two, it's catastrophic. You're breaking the laws of uniformitarianism, this big, huge word that goes back to the beginning of geology in Scotland with James Hutton back in the late 1700s. And you just can't do that to break the laws. And so in 1920...
Okay. This guy says it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it was 100 years ago. We need to do like a 100-year centenary and celebration of J. Harlan Brett's breaking science and basically proving the Bible, or supporting the Bible, bringing people out of the dark ages of thinking the Bible isn't trustworthy. You can't do that. Where did the water come from? Can't. And I couldn't find it tonight, but there's another expose on, or documentary on Brett's, and they said, you can't, this sounds like a flood. This sounds like a global flood. And like literally our whole racket is built on disproving that. We start at the flood didn't happen. That's zero. We're geologists, which is kind of like studying rocks, but really it's about the flood didn't happen-ology. That's what it is. Can't do it. You're breaking the laws. Where'd the water come from? Sounds like a flood. Can't happen. Sounds catastrophic. Also can't happen. Dismissed.
27. He was invited to Washington, D.C., to the Geological Society of America meeting. And they said to Brett's, we would like to have you present a paper on your Spokane flood. They didn't tell him that they had lined up 5 hydrologists with the U.S. Geological Survey after them, the top 5 in the United States, to tell him how wrong he was. And they did.
I always want to know who they are, because I've watched this 1,000 times. This is the kind of stuff I nerd out on. It's nerd night. They. Who is they? They lined up the 5 leading geologists and hydrologists to blast Brett's. I want you to remember, he was actually right. And rather than science going, you know what? Wow, holy Moses, that's cool. Let's look into it, because we're interested in science. Right? People always talk to me, science, peer review. No. Nope. Tell them about the Bible, you're done. He was telling them something. He wasn't saying it was the Bible. He was just saying it was a catastrophic flood. The flood was big. They're like, nope. We're going to actually ruin you. We're not interested in the science. We're not interested. Does this sound like anything? Like the Big Bang or any of this other stuff? We're not interested in your science, Jay. We're not interested. I don't care. What you're saying sounds too much like the Bible, and you're done. You'll never work in this town again.
The leadoff guy, O.E. Meinzer, the father of American hydrology, followed by James Galooly. He wrote the geology textbook that I learned geology on way back when, Galooly, Waters, and Woodford. G.R. Mansfield, W.C. Alden, and E.T. McKnight. All of these guys crucified him. And by that time, he had moved back to the University of Chicago. And he said...
That's interesting that he used the word crucified, isn't it? Imagine a world where you speak the truth and they want to kill you for it. That sounds like a world we live in, doesn't it? They crucified him.
Forget it. I'm not going to do any more research on the Spokane flood. For them, the top 5 in the United States, to tell him how wrong he was. And they did. The leadoff guy, O.E. Meinzer, the father of American hydrology, followed by James Galooly. He wrote the geology textbook that I learned geology on.
Weird. The leading hydrologist and the guy who wrote the textbook. Literally the guy who wrote the textbook.
On way back when, Galooly, Waters, and Woodford. G.R. Mansfield, W.C. Alden, and E.T. McKnight. All of these guys crucified him. And by that time, he had moved back to the University of Chicago. And he said, forget it. I'm not going to do any more research on the Spokane flood. And he actually shifted his whole geological research area to caves and cave formation, especially in the limestone caves area of the mid-continent of the United States. But the onslaught continued all the way through the 1930s. And on the left-hand side, Ira Allison, a professor at Oregon State. And he had his own ideas he mapped out all of these erratics, these different rocks, granites and argillites and metamorphic rocks, all up and down the Portland area, the Vancouver area.
Don't you just want to live in a world? I say these kind of things on the lives all the time. You want to live in a world where the science matters and the truth matters. And when you discover something that is true, you can speak it. And the system, the very system who writes the textbooks, appointed by Washington, whatever's going on in Washington, the science committee, who cares, established by Thomas Henry Huxley, this idea of the secular think tank, that you can say the thing and they can go, you know what? Great. Let's look, we were wrong. We don't live in that world. You think that when people come onto my lives or we have these debates or Dan McClellan with his degrees and you regurgitate the thing that Galuli said, he literally wrote the textbook that this guy learned from. I got to listen to them? Why? They're chock filled of frauds, hucksters, lying, gaslighting, censoring, bullying. The truth is just going to happen. The truth will set you free. And I'll tell you what, if you're holding a lie down, if you are going to cover up a lie, like evidence, the true history of how the earth was formed to 8 billion people, and you're going to hide that history up, you're going to have to control the information, and you are going to have to crucify and attack the people representing the truth. Does this sound like Jesus at all? They got him, they got all of his apostles, stamped it out. Guess what? Didn't stop it. Some weeds, when you step on them, it causes their proliferation. And the truth is one of those weeds. And it's only a weed to people who hate the truth. Anyways, let's go for another minute.
In the Willamette Valley. But he had other ideas as to how they got there. And then this guy on the right-hand side, Richard Foster Flynn, Yale professor. He is the father of American glaciology and glacial geology. And a guy that was really well respected. He actually had been out here. He studied the Touchy beds, which I'll talk about in a second. Yet he hated Bretz, and he said, Bretz, you aren't right at all. And he just he would go out of his way to tell Bretz how wrong he was. Now, when we rewrote the book, we got all these pictures of these old guys because Marjorie didn't have them in the first book. And when she came in and was reviewing them, she said, this is my favorite picture in the whole book. And I said, it's just an old guy. What do you mean? And she said, well, you have to remember, I'm a Dickens novelist. And in every Dickens novel, there is a sleazy, greasy, bad guy, Uriah Heep type guy. And boy, he sure looks like it. And so he really was the thorn in the side of J. Harlan Bretz. And the onslaught continued until 1940. And this is when J.T. Pardee broke the silence at that time. And he made a presentation here in Seattle. And this was at the American Association.
Lottie-dottie, this guy likes to party. Watch this.
Association for the Advancement of Science meeting that was up there. And he was there at that 1927 talk in Washington, D.C. And he turned to his friend at the side and says, I know where the water came from. Because these guys were saying, you don't have a source of the water and you can't be catastrophic. And then he said, and he had been working for the U.S. Geological Survey for many, many years up in Montana. Who was his boss? All those 5 guys that crucified Bretz. And so he couldn't come out. But when he retired, he said, I'm going to tell the rest of the story. And he said, I've been working up in the Merkel Pass area.
Okay, couple things here. I didn't notice this before. These guys all crucified him. This is like, it's crazy. Reality is so intense, you guys. And we are living out the word of God. I don't understand it. My guess is some sort of quantum physical information-based thing. But this guy is not a Christian. I don't know. I'm not judging him, but this is a very secular talk. They're talking about crucifying him. You've got this evil, demonic-looking Satan's greasy figure, like the evil bad guy. And he was the thorn in the side of the guy, Bretz, who was showing the world that they could trust the Bible. Jesus said, they don't believe Moses or the prophets. Why would they believe you? Talking to in that Lazarus story with the guy with the chasm they couldn't cross. I'm going to come back from the dead to warn them. He goes, well, they're not going to listen to you. They won't listen to Moses and the prophets. So here you get this like archetypal Jesus thing where Harlan Bretz is teaching the world the truth that the Bible is trustworthy, and he's got all these people crucifying him, and a guy that looks like the devil, like the greasy scumbag, is the thorn in his side. Wow, that's crazy. Anyways, Lottie-dottie, he likes to party. J.D. Pardee. He knew where the water came from. And he whispered it to his friend. He goes, I know, I've been researching this, and it was definitely a flood. It was massive. That happened. It totally happened. But I'm not going to tell anybody because I'm pretty close to retirement. And so I'm just going to have to let this play out. Feel bad for Bretz, but I'm not going to have that stink around me. And he waited until he retired to speak up. Why? Why would a scientist who is about to... This is the geologic discovery of modernity. This discovery is the biggest geologic discovery in, if not ever, in 250 years of these yahoos doing this. This is the most important thing. The whole world should be hearing about how this amazing catastrophic flood totally irrevocably changed 1/5 of the country of America, 1/6 of the country of North America. And geology, it's like, wait till you see some of these things I'm going to show you. This is the coolest thing ever. Like, they want to teach you about dinosaurs and your chimpanzee, blah, blah, blah. A global flood, or a massive flood, is cool. And they were on the precipice of breaking the biggest scientific news story ever, and they're hiding from the guys that are going to crucify everybody. And they want to talk about it, but they can't. Don't you want to live in a world where the scientist can tell you the truth and break the coolest story ever and not be afraid to lose his pension? Well, we don't live in that world. And if you think it's any different today, 100 years later, you're wrong. There is nothing new under the sun, also written in the book. Because people are the same. We just fractally recapitulate this story. 80 years. 20 years of the beginning, spring, 20 years of summer where you work really hard, 20 years of fall where you kind of enjoy it, and then 20 years of winter where you turn gray and then die. We're just living this thing out. It's like reality is not what they told you, okay? It's not what they told you. I understand I'm just some crazy guy, got a few, 250,000 people on TikTok and, 5,000 people, whatever, 3,500 people here. I need you guys, whoever this is touching and whoever you can get this to, it's not what they told you. It's not what they told you. It's so much more exciting. And we have the historical documented record, and it's exactly congruent with the science. And I tell you that, and they want to Barrett's me. The dude had to retire before he could say anything. Listen to this again.
He really was the thorn in the side of J. Harlan Bretz. And the onslaught continued until 1940. And this is when J.T. Pardee broke the silence at that time, and he made a presentation here in Seattle. And this was at the American Association for the Advancement of Science meeting that was up there. And he was there at that 1927 talk in Washington, D.C. And he turned to his friend at the side and says, I know where the water came from. Because these guys were saying, you don't have a source of the water and you can't be catastrophic. And then he said, and he had been working for the U.S. Geological Survey for many, many years up in Montana. Who was his boss? All those 5 guys that crucified Bretz. And so he couldn't come out. But when he retired, he said, I'm going to tell the rest of the story.
Who did he work for? The 5 guys who were crucifying Bretz. Those were his bosses. You ever had a job? How about that story? They control the money. I talked about this all the time. Follow the money. They control the money. They paid his paycheck. He's whispering to his friend. He waited 20 years to say something. He had to wait till he retired, and he broke the silence. And in his words, he came out. He came out. Hey, I couldn't tell anybody because I would have been fired and maybe killed by my bosses for telling the truth. But, I know where the water came from.
And he said, I've been working up in the Merkle Pass area.
Okay, so these are the ripples. The point is, this thing happened, and I want to go back to this really quick. Above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it been since the beginning of creation. But they deliberately forget that long ago by God's word, these people that are on this are deliberately forgetting. Okay? They deliberately forget that long ago by God's word, the heavens came into being, and the earth was formed out of water and in water. And by water, sorry. By these waters, also the time of that time was deluged and destroyed. Deliberately forgetting it. So all this is about. Nothing about science at all. Okay, I want to talk about the scale of this thing. This is the Missoula Flood thing, and I covered a little bit on my 1-minute video or 5-minute video. I tried to do each section in a minute. I could literally do 3 hours on the geology. So I don't know how far we're going to get through this. We'll see. But this is the Dry Falls Formation, and this is in that major flood, the Pacific Northwest flood. These are the kind of things that Bretz was seeing. He's like, oh, guys, big old flood. They're like, no, we'll kill you. Okay, this is the Niagara Falls. The Niagara Falls, this is the Horseshoe Dam. Remarkably, even by the official narrative, Niagara Falls is only 12,000 years old. That's funny, right? It's like billions and billions. No, 12,000 years old. This is like science. This is called the Horseshoe Dam, and what happens is water in the middle always goes faster. Water on the sides goes slower. If you've ever kayaked or canoed, you can go to the side. These are called eddies. You can kind of just take it easy. You get in the middle and you're going, here I go, right? So the water's ripping down the middle, and it's eroding this in the center faster because the water is going faster, right? This is easy physics stuff. Well, out here, it's not eroding as fast. And then this kind of snowballs. It's a feedback loop, and it starts eroding it faster. It's closer, which is hitting faster. It's funneling. I'm sure there's more of a groove in the middle, and it starts eroding back in this horseshoe shape. This is about 50 feet. There was a cruise ship in one of them, but it's about 50 feet, maybe 75 feet. These are like 400 feet. So it's, 4 to 6 times deeper. So right there, you've got like obviously considerably bigger. This guy here, they estimate as being 4 times the size of Niagara Falls. So this guy is 4 Niagara Falls. This guy is probably 7, 8. This guy's like 30. The Niagara Falls, the water spills over the edge at 200,000 cubic feet per second. It's a lot. Nobody knows what that means. Trying to imagine cubic feet. If you've ever worked in like cement or something, you might be able to visualize that. 200,000 cubic feet per second. Muchos agua. The water came through at 300 to 400 million cubic feet per second. Yep. 10 times would be 200 million. You're talking about, they estimate hundreds to thousands of times larger, this event that happened here, than the Niagara Falls, which, by the way, is rapidly eroding back this whole river. It's going to be in Canada pretty soon. It's just ripping back up. And they've measured it. And what's crazy is it was going a lot faster before, and it's slowing down now. And they're like, yeah, it's been eroding for about 12,000 years. But that's assuming they know the rate of erosion. That's just assuming that because it's 1 foot a year. At one point, it was 5 feet a year. Probably at one point, it was 10 feet a year. So they just make up whatever date they want. What does it work? 12,000 years? Sure. That's it. We don't know. It's like the expansion of the Big Bang. Okay, a couple other things. This is a tape measure, which is this is a foot. This is 2 feet. I estimate, very scientific. I'm a citizen amateur researcher of science, journalist. And I estimate that these are about 1/2 of an inch, somewhere between 1/2 of an inch and 3/4 of an inch deep. This was from a pretty considerable flood. It's like 6 feet of water that went through here. And as the water rips through, it causes these ripples, right? So figure 4 to 6 feet of water, you get 3/4 of an inch. This is the giant ice age ripples of Camas Prairie in Idaho. Those aren't great pictures. Oops, I did something to that. That's a house. That little guy right here, if you can see my mouse is pointing at a house. These are about 50 feet tall. So let's just assume that the picture I showed was 1/2 inch. That's 100 times bigger. So if that was a 6-foot flood, you're looking at 600 feet of water. What we know is that at Portland, when this thing washed out all the way to Portland, Portland was under 400 feet of water. 400 feet of water. Portland, that's deep. It's like 3 Space Needles. Just think, try and find a building, go if you're downtown Denver, any town, find a 40-story building, any 40-story building. That's how deep the water was at Portland. This isn't conspiracy or Christian. This is just what it is. This is the geologic data. Hydrologic data, I guess. Find a 20-story building. Stack 2 of those up and think Portland was under that much water. This is a lot of water. Okay? Like a global catastrophe. This is what they had in their little, trying to hide the truth. So the geology of this is staggering. Now, the thing is, that wasn't the end of it. You'd think, okay, we have one big flood. People say this to me, like Dan McClellan did the video, it's one flood. We all think that the floods happened. Yeah, because J. Harlan Bretz beat science. Took them on and won. He fought the law and he won. He fought the sheriff. Or shot the sheriff. He outlived all the detractors, which is cool. But that's one thing if that was all that ever happened. However, here's what you have to think about. They just proved this 100 years ago. No, he started proving it 100 years ago. It took him 20, 30 years. It wasn't really accepted till like the 60s, 70s. And nobody gives a shit about it now. Excuse my language. Nobody cares. They're just, it's like, whatever. There's a huge flood up there. Nothing to see here. So nobody's looking into it like they should. Nobody's taking this data and looking all around the world and going, hey, imagine if this happened all over the world. Would that be something? Wouldn't that be something if this happened in multiple places all over the world? Well, the information, as the truth does, is escaping. Listen to this.
Really good dates on it, so I'm sticking to those for right now. Now, is this the biggest flood that we have ever found? Up until 2 years ago, we said yes.
This is 8 years ago this came out. So as of 10 years ago, 90 years after Bretts broke science, they said, is this the largest flood in the world? Yeah, for sure. Well, they've found quite a few more. And listen to this.
Second largest, and if you can't see all of these in the back row, but the biggest one is in Altai, Russia. In fact, the top 10 are all glacial dams that break and flow out. And then we've got here, this is the peak discharge in million cubic meters per second. That's a huge amount. 18 million was the one that was found in Altai, Russia. 17 million was the Missoula floods, the very first one that we had. But then, just last year, they found one in Iceland, another ice dam flood that came out, and it was just a little bit bigger than that one. So this is the third largest one that geologists have found. So
the Missoula flood, as of now, is only the third largest. There are two of these events larger than the Missoula flood. The one in Sweden is very hard to find. I think there's a language barrier thing. But I'm going to show you a couple things on the Altai flood really fast, because this is insane. You'll see, I don't know how much I'll go into this, but this looks just like what we saw in Idaho, right? The ripples. This is people on a car or by their car. These ripples are bigger. Like at one point, I've said before, like once you understand how this stuff works, like the mechanisms are the same. You just got to scale them up or down or whatever. This Altai flood is bigger than the one that we saw. And it's the same kind of thing. Let's see if I can.
Massive wall of water came through here at the end of the ice age. You can tell just by the canyon here how wide it is. Evidence of a massive amount of water.
Look at the size of that.
Really. Down here in this area, there are ripples.
I'm going to actually go back a little bit. This is just a dude. I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit. Not just a dude. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but maybe he's like an amateur geologist or whatever, which is actually really cool. New stuff's coming out. So here's the Altai area. And you can see, did you see the size of this? Like as we zoom in a little bit, watch this. Do you see all, now you can kind of know what to look at? They're like, yeah, we just found these. I don't know, it just popped up. Like I'm sure everybody in that area tells the tradition of the flood and be like, you're stupid, you don't know there was a flood. You're anti-science. I just started doing, I'm going to maybe show another clip here in a minute. This is all over Utah. These are all, now that we have these formations and we have Google Earth, like just go to work. Here's my challenge. If you're young, if you're into geology, if you're like a student thinking these things through, make a project out of it. Make it a high school project. See how much trouble you can get in. Go win the J. Harlan Bretts Award. Go to Google Earth and start finding these all around the Earth because they're everywhere. Because it was a global flood. Yep. Global, but I actually do think it was ice dam. I do think it was as the waters recede and that area was cold, and I do think ice dams broke. So I think, just like with evolution, things do change over time. They just don't get better, they get worse. And with the situation, it was an ice dam flood, but where did the waters come from, which we're going to cover next. But look at the size of this.
This is one of the areas right down
here.
Hey,
Look, you'll see the ripples. Look at the size of that canyon carved out.
Canyon here, how wide it is. Evidence of a massive amount of water.
And then they go down, you see the ripples. Same thing. See the ripples?
And I mean massive ripples here. I covered the landscape in this area. Go for ways, but this is just what occurred.
And so what I was talking about earlier is like, oh, look at it. At one point, and I say this a lot with my arguments about why I don't believe in the Big Bang and why I don't believe in evolution and why I don't, why I lean that the Earth is younger. If you can be intellectually honest, you can look at the preponderance of evidence. And if the chances are that this happened, we need to look at that as a potentiality of the scientific explanation and not just blindly say no way, which is what they're doing. But yeah, him and this guy kind of got me going on it. Very few papers on the Altai flood. Nobody's looking at it. 500,000 scientific papers posted on the theory of evolution currently, or how evolution works and mechanisms. less than 50 papers on the Altai flood. Yep. But seems to me like if I'm the czar of the scientific technocracy, I go, hey, let's go send some geologists over there and let's see how big this flood was. That'd be cool, right? Nope. Nope. Don't look at it. Don't tell anybody about it. Most people I'm talking to probably have never even heard of the Altai Mountains, because the only reason I know of the Altai Mountain flood is because of that video that I've watched 1,000 times and then digging, trying to find evidence of this. There's no scientific papers on it, which is going to come up in another second here. But yeah, same thing. Look at the size of this mound that these guys are on. I'm going to go back just a hair. Look at the size of this mound. There's the ripples, bigger, further apart, which would mean more water. And this one here is a mountain. On top of all smoky, made by a flood. And it's maybe 70 feet or 100 feet. Who knows? Massive, which is why it's bigger. It's bigger than the Pacific Northwest flood, right? Amazing stuff. So there's not just that one. There's multiple of them. Now, I want to show this this is going to be hard for me because I wasn't able to do enough research on it. So forgive me. This guy I just found, I put an inquiry and I want to work with him. But he's talking about these dams a little bit. This should take me about 5 minutes to get through.
Welcome back to another episode of Cartography and Catastrophe. Today, we're going to focus on cataracts around the world. And these aren't the cataracts you get in your eyes. These are caused by massive amounts of water flowing over the landscape. One of the best places to view a modern cataract is over at Niagara Falls. And I think that's the perfect place to
Oops.
start out. For those of you that have not been to Niagara Falls yet, I'd highly recommend it because you get a really good idea of just how powerful these waterfalls can be. And already we can see the classic horseshoe or cataract shape right here. I really want you to pay attention to that shape because we're going to be seeing a lot here.
That's the horseshoe I was talking about.
And if we change our orientation, that gives us an even better look. We just have a whole river's worth of water flowing over this cliff face right here. And very slowly over time, the rocks here will erode and fall down, and this cataract will work its way further and further back. Another way to think about this is that a couple hundred...
Okay, so that's the cataract.
What I want you to understand, though, is that the current river is just cutting through one small portion of the cataract. And it's clearly been doing that for hundreds and thousands of years. It's cutting through this one small
This
spot.
guy's an older,
So
just so you know, this isn't, I don't do young Earth creationist research. Everything's going to be secular. So this guy believes in an old Earth, but he also is like working with Randall Carlson and starting to like go, hey, they're lying to us about this is weird. I don't know why they're not looking into it, but he's an old Earth guy. So this isn't pushing young Earth creation, but it gets really interesting here in a minute.
We're going to head around the planet now to South America and check out Iguazu Falls, which it won't be in as good of detail, but it's the same principle. And we have a cataract right here with the
South America too.
Cliff walls and tons of water flowing over it. But it's pretty similar to Niagara Falls, all things considered, where you have the river here just flowing through and causing the waterfall. This one seems to be a lot smaller though than Niagara Falls, and if we measure it from side to side, I think we'll see that. Yeah, this one's only about 500 feet. And this would be best viewed from some photos of the waterfalls rather than Google Earth. You can just imagine if you're standing down there, you have all this water just pouring over the cliffs around you. And that's another visual I really want you to keep in your mind. Now that we've explored 3 modern waterfalls, let's head over to Eastern Washington and check out the Skylines, which we've talked about in the first video in this series. There we go. We have the channeled scablands right in this general area. And one of the most striking features is right here. We have this massive scar in the landscape amidst all the farming. As we get a bit closer, you can see another iconic
Okay,
cataract
so he's
right
talking
here.
about all of the kind of stuff that we had just mentioned. But I want this is proprietary information that I'm breaking here. I'm going to break this, and then I'm going to break some paleontologic information that is proprietary. You haven't heard anywhere else. Well, except for maybe this guy's channel, but he's not looking at it from a young Earth creation standpoint. If we grew up in Colorado, I grew up in Colorado. I've driven to Vegas a dozen times. You go through Green River. You go through. Part of my fascination with this is driving through Grand Junction and through the Grand Canyon and seeing all those different canyons and stuff. It's like I never believed what they said. Like, that river didn't make that. That river didn't make that. Even when I didn't have any reason to believe that. I'm like, wasn't worried about the Bible or anything at that time. But Green River, this to me opens up a can of worms for secular geology that you'll hear him say that nobody's looking into it and he's not sure why. Watch this.
Always try to shy away from these impact theories. For whatever reason, they just hate to go there. I don't know why. Anyway, that was just one interesting feature here in Canyonlands National Park. Let's move over to one of my favorite areas, though, the Green River Overlook. I spent a lot of time out here when I was living in the desert out of my car, and this is a great place to photograph the sunset and the night sky. It wasn't until recently, though, that I started to understand the landscape a lot better. And now that we've looked at all those cataracts today, I hope that you're starting to understand what we're looking at right here. I want to stress right now that this is getting a little bit out there, if you will, because I've done a lot of research and I can't find a single scientific paper that discusses these features.
I think this guy's like asteroids, and again, I think he's Graham Hancock in his thinking. But I want to preface this. I'm trying to be like a respectable researcher of geology, but this is going to be a little bit out there, and people aren't going to love this. But I can't find a single scientific paper on this. Now that we're seeing these cataracts, now that we're seeing these dry falls horseshoes, this is in Green River, Utah. Anybody talking about a great flood in Green River, Utah? I'll tell you this. If the system, like the Grand Canyon is like boardwalk for these yahoos. And if that comes out, that the Grand Canyon was caused by a flood, they're not going to be able to keep this story under wraps anymore. So this is a Green River and nobody's talking about it, but look, it's the same cataracts and giant.
Therefore, I'm going to lay out my own hypothesis right now. And this is based off some off-record discussions with geologists and just looking at the landscape and
Did you hear that again? Off-record discussions with geologists. Did you hear that? They're not going to talk about it. He's like, yeah, you should check out this Green River thing. It looks like a global flood, just like Party. Like, it's off-record, though. Do not quote me because they'll ruin me. Because I know. Don't quote me on this. But yeah, so there's a thing going on there. You should check it out.
Therefore, I'm going to lay out my own hypothesis right now.
I got to rewind this.
And this is,
listen to this.
I want to stress right now that this is getting a little bit out there, if you will, because I've done a lot of research and I can't find a single scientific paper that discusses these features. Therefore, I'm going to lay out my own hypothesis right now. And this is based off some off-record discussions with geologists and just looking at the landscape and comparing it to what we've seen today. So what I would argue is that all the features we're looking at right here are actually extinct cataracts. In other words, these were all basically Niagara Falls at one time or another. And
remember what dry falls looks like? Look at this. I guess I don't have it on that one. It's this one. Dry falls, if you were to zoom back up and pull out, you see the different U's and the way that it's gouged out. This guy, this researcher online is just checking it out. And look, hey, dry falls. Well, you know what? Fine. Missoula Flood totally caused that. But that's it. There's an ice dam, nothing catastrophic. Forget about it. Oh, Altai. Yeah, that's a big one. Nobody look at that. Nobody look at Altai. Altai doesn't matter. Let's not look at Altai. Oh, Green River. This is just, the dam is just breaking. Forgive the pun. And they're just putting their fingers in there. Nope, no flood. Nothing to see here. It certainly wasn't floods all over the earth. Fine. Uniformitarianism is wrong. Catastrophism's a thing. Water came from somewhere. We think it's glaciers, but it's not all over the world because like we can't have like it was in Missoula Flood. It's like a cheater. Like yeah, one time I met her that one time. You caught me. We only had coffee. Was it? Nothing more. I saw your bill, California Pizza Kitchen and pizza. We had coffee and then pizza. And that was it. That was it. That was it. And then I just said, it's nice to see you. Have a nice day. And then I saw your bill at the hotel. Yeah, we went to the hotel, but it was just like, I just wanted to see her in a room. She was in like a restaurant. I just wanted to see what she looked like in the room. It's like, and then I saw, this is what it is. It's just, shut up, you're lying. And you're busted. Okay? You're busted. Let it go. And you know what? Fine. They tell me all the time on my debates. I debate atheists all the time. If you're not following me on TikTok, you got to go watch the TikTok debates. Hundreds and hundreds of people, scientists, whoever, we just debate them all. They go, science is always wrong. And that's what makes it good. So they got this game going where it's like, they have the peer review process, which is their filtering process to just stop everyone from asking any questions. And you can only be a peer if you believe what they believe. And then if you get something submitted, they just blast you, which by the way, I'm going to have a scientist on soon who submitted his college thesis on the idea that the Big Bang may not have happened and we're misinterpreting the cosmic microwave background radiation. And guess what? They ruined him and he quit science. And I'm going to have him on my show. So the peer review process is really effective at getting the whole crowd to point and laugh at you. It's 2023. Inclusion, right? We're all inclusive. Right. Question the narrative and find out how inclusive they are. If you can find out real quick, right? You get to the peer review process, great. And then you just end up in this situation where you cannot explore these ideas in any kind of levity. You can't be a person of position in power and talk about these things. They're going to absolutely shut it down every single time. So what's happening is there's a whole group of young people who heard of a thing called the internet. And in the internet, they've been able to now well, I should be, when I'm ranting, I should be showing more of my face. Because of the internet, we can do our own research and we can make our own conclusions. And this scares the bejesus out of them. I didn't say the S word there because I'm trying not to say that, but that seems like a much worse word to say. I've never said it before, but I immediately regretted it. That scares their pants off them. But it was like, look, I got Google Earth and I got eyeballs and I see how things work. There's cataracts in Green River and they're huge. And that's like way smaller than the Grand Canyon. Anyways, all right, let's keep going.
And if we measure some of these, that'll give us a really interesting insight into what might have happened. This one right here is just about the same size as Niagara Falls. We have another one right here. This one is actually a little bit bigger than the modern day Niagara Falls at 1,185 feet. Then we have, of course, these ones over here, etc. So they're all roughly 1,000 feet. That means rather than just one river flowing over Niagara Falls, you would have had, well, at least 10 or more, all happening at the same time. If we change our viewpoint here, there's clearly no river flowing over this location. That means it must have been rainfall. This is one reason why we looked at...
It's kind of hard to tell, but the water's coming this way, right? Down the hill, carving them out this way. And look, he called them cataracts. It's just, they're everywhere, all over the world. Okay, and he said something else that was interesting.
Iguazu Falls earlier, because we saw that really breathtaking photo of down in the canyon.
Okay, and this is in the desert, by the way. That's a problem for the theory. Okay, 1830. I want to show this, and then I'll move on maybe to the next thing. 1830. Let's see what he says here. That was interesting.
All throughout the Canyonlands. So you can start to imagine that this would have been a...
Look at that. I want you to think about this now with the Grand Canyon and just, and I don't, nobody's saying like, look, maybe the Grand Canyon was formed through something else. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say the Grand Canyon was fully formed by this, but sure seems likely to me. But look, you can see now how this is just rapid erosion caused by a washout, basically. You can, again, I'm really critical of the theory of evolution and the secular model. And part of it is it's not logical. You want to believe that canyon formed that, fine. But a washout makes more sense to how you understand how reality works.
Catastrophic event, and it would have washed away anything that was here before. Over the last few hundred and thousand years, though, things have really calmed down, and the erosion has been largely preserved because there hasn't been hardly any rainfall since then. And if the floods that caused all these cataracts were fairly recent, again, I'd say 13,000 years ago or sooner, then all that material probably got washed out through the Colorado River, through the Grand Canyon, and ultimately down into Mexico down here. That makes sense to me anyway. As I mentioned before, I'm kind of going out on a limb here because there's been no official research that I can see that's been done on these canyons, and nobody's really even willing to go there. And that's one of the things I wanted to do in this series, is explore these interesting ideas with the help of modern technology. Because now the average person has really powerful tools at their command where they can actually see the erosion that took place in the past. Whether that's the National Map Viewer, the LiDAR imaging, or Google Earth. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.
So they've really relied on having the tech. This is something I always say in the debates. If they are telling you how old the universe is, and the way that they're telling you how old the universe is because of their superpower cameras that, are $70 billion, and all the king's horses and all the king's men are used to build it, and they fly it up there, and they're the only ones who can use it, how do you question them? And how is this any different than the Catholic Church hiding the Bible that nobody could read it? What is happening today is the Gutenberg-influenced information revolution, and it is going to absolutely sink their theory. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Thunderdome, as Neil deGrasse Tyson would say. Their whole process of you have to go to their school at certain Ivy League school, certain amount of years to be fully indoctrinated to get the certificate that you can speak on it now, or you can get to the telescope because you're not going to misinterpret the data, is done. It's done. They're done. And we are reporting on it in real time. How exciting. Citizen amateur researchers of science who are reporting on the validity of the written word of the author of this creation. And boy, I'll tell you, the harvest is great and the workers are few. We need help out here. Everybody get to work. I've been saying this. Cancel your Netflix subscription. Don't ever watch another Disney movie that is occult, sex, magic for your children. Cancel Disney. Cancel your cable subscription. I don't care. TNT, TBS, whatever stuff people watch. CNN, Fox, it's all the same. Fox and CNN are owned by the same outfit. It's all the same thing. It's bread and circus. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Get to work. Read the Bible. Understand the Bible. Do your research on science. There's a revolution. We are in the beginning parts of the throes of an information revolution. And we are the foot soldiers. And you need to do your work. I don't know, I'm going to get preachy there. It's how they do this. They just control the whole thing. Well, we have the computers now. Pretty soon, like this is what happened with the James Webb Space Telescope. They were like, oh yeah, well, everybody can look at these images. And they were like, holy Moses, no, fully formed galaxies, Matt, nope, don't. This is why I say I'm reporting on it in real time. I was reporting on this. You can watch my YouTube channel, my YouTube show on the Big Bang from like June. I'm like, yeah, the theory's done. It sucks. And I did the whole propaganda, showed all the stuff they're going to do. They're going to say it's instrumentation. They're going to change the rules. They're going to move the goalposts. They're going to push it away. And they did it. And then they found other ones. And I did another show. And I said the same thing. So they're going to do. And then I go and I do a show and I go, hey, it's done. They go, no, it's not done. J. Harlan Brett's thorn in your side. Okay, geology's done. So that's geology. Dude, Altai. The Green River Formation. That blows my mind. Okay, I'm going to show you one quick fun thing here. We'll take a quick intermission with this fun thing. I'm going to teach you about some real secular geology for a second. I have paleontology and meteorology to still cover. I would like the chat, sorry to do this in the middle of a YouTube teaching, if the chat would tell me if they want me to do, it's going to take me about an hour, or we can wrap up and do a part 2, and I would like to hear from Chloe too, because we've got the paleontology one is going to be, I got some proprietary news on there, and it's kind of a big deal. So I want to make sure I'm good. I can stay fresh. I can do it, but I want to see what you guys want to do. Okay. I want to tell you something about how they do science. Ready? Sure, there's a couple problems with the flood, the heat problem, the biogeography. I get it. There's a couple problems with young Earth radiometric dating in particular. I get it. There's issues with all the theories. We don't know particularly. That's why I say I believe. But when they don't have an answer, see, if we don't have an answer, they accuse us of God of the gaps, right? God of the gaps. You can't use that. You're ignorant and you're using God. Well, I say all the time, they do science of the gaps. I want you to watch Science of the Gaps and how embarrassing it is for them. This is called When a Billion Years Disappeared.
When geologist Clarence Dutton first saw the Grand Canyon in 1880, he was spellbound by its colorful walls. The Grand Canyon's walls are made up of rock layers, each representing a distinct period of Earth's history. And some of the lower rock beds deep down in the Grand Canyon looked kind of tilted. Dutton knew these layers were made up of very old sediments. Originally, they had been laid down as horizontal beds, mostly in rivers or shallow seas. Then the sediments hardened over time and geologic forces pushed some of the layers upward at an angle. As time passed, the tops of these tilted layers were sheared off by erosion, and later, new layers of sediment, which stayed more or less horizontal, were deposited right on top of them. And he knew every step of this process took time, because you generally don't get horizontal layers on top of tilted ones unless there's an age difference between them.
He knew it took time. Like, watch how they spin this thing. He knew it took time, because you wouldn't get these things. It would either be like a catastrophic flood or deep time, one or the other. Keep going.
In his examinations of the Grand Canyon, Dutton got a first-hand look at what geologists call an unconformity. Basically, that's a gap in the geological record. It shows that sedimentation didn't happen continuously, and that there's an age difference between sets of rock layers, and sometimes that age gap can be millions of years or more. In 1882, Dutton named this particular break the Great Unconformity. At first, nobody realized just how great it was. Today we know from radiometric dating that the rocks directly on top of the Great Unconformity were laid down during the Cambrian period, about 500 million years ago. But in some places, the rocks below this great...
Okay. I'm going to let you guys guess this in the chat and watching this in the replay. The Tapete Sandstone, according to their radiometric dating, 500 million years ago. The Vishnu Schist, I'm just saying that's how it's said. Guess how old it is? Go ahead and at home, write down your answer, scribble down on a piece of paper. If you're in the chat, say it. And as you're thinking about this, how old it is, what this time difference is, I want you to realize what they just did to you. She changed her inflection. Sometimes scientists, they don't get it really right. They don't know. We don't need to know. Because the things we need to know, we tell you. And the things that I want you to know, I'm just going to say whatever I need to say. But we have this problem. But it's not that big of a problem. It's just a little problem. It's just a little problem. It's a little problem called the great unconformity. It's fine. It's not science of the gaps. And it's got a very scientific name. It's called an unconformity, meaning that it's not going to conform. They should have just said inconformity. It's an unconformity. And it's a great one. They should have called it unconformitus maximus. That would have been even more scientific. Unconformitus maximus. I got a guess here, 300 million years. Shetler says 1 billion. Spencer says 666 million. That's a good guess, but it's not nearly enough time.
Unconformity are about 1.2 billion years older. That's a big gap. I mean, the Earth itself is only about 4.5 billion years old. So at this spot in the Grand Canyon, 25% of the planet's entire history is gone.
If we just played Price is Right, you certainly didn't go over. Closest without going over. Very, very much under. You could take the highest guess, which was 1 billion, and the next highest guess, which was 666 million years, and you could have put them together, and you still would have been short. 1.75 billion. So 1.25 billion years missing. It ain't there. This layer is deposited 800 million years ago. This layer 600 million years ago. This layer 500 million years ago. Same processes, slow, steady process. The dirt comes from space or somewhere. The dirt's moving around, grow dirt, spacey grow dirt. It's laying down very evenly, very predictable. It's like a clock. 800 million years, 700 million years, 600 million years, 500 million years, 1.75 billion years. Somebody get a hold of the people who were crucifying Bretts and let them know that we're missing a quarter of the Earth's history, supposedly 1.25 billion years. Yep, it's gone. Just doesn't exist. But it doesn't matter because somehow, it just doesn't matter. 90 billion, 80 million, 70 million, 1.25 billion. What happened? Anybody want to tell me what happened for a billion years? A billion years. A billion, 2.5 years. It's like you're going through your calendar. It's like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Saturday. What happened to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? It's an unconformity. Date unconformity. Maybe you have the date wrong. Nope, just it's gone. Does anybody care? Nope. Defending the narrative, right? So the whole God of the Gaps thing, science of the gaps, it sucks. It's a joke. Great unconformity. That's the next thing I'm going to say when somebody stumps me. It's a biogeographic unconformity. Nobody knows. Okay, that wraps geology. Again, if you haven't seen the video, please go watch it on TikTok. Please share it. If you haven't seen it here on YouTube, please share it. I really want to try to get this information into as many people's heads as possible. This is defending Scripture. The mission statement of VOR is defending the Creator and the information war. Very on brand with what we're trying to do. Share it with your atheist friends, your Christian. This is what's great about this. The atheists are going to hate it, and they're going to blast you, and you're going to be your own version of J. Harlan Bretts and me, and your Christian friends are going to love it. They're going to go, wow, I could trust the Bible. This is exciting. And this is the first of many top 5 videos we're going to do. Okay. Meteorology. I'm going to teach you guys something here really quick. I think we can get through this. Just worried. Chloe, do you have a take on splitting this into 2 pieces?
It wouldn't be until Sunday. I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay. Onward. Here we go. If you guys know about the Ice Age, this is the module, if you will, on meteorology, the study of weather. Okay. The Ice Age. You know, we get all these ideas of like, oh, the whole world was covered in snow. Yeah. The Bible actually remarkably predicts the Ice Age or reports on it. The book of Job covers it really well. It's really cool. Oldest book. So basically, here's what the Ice Age looked like in the Northern Hemisphere. And it would be the same in Europe. This is obviously North America. But you just, slap over, it's a technical travel term, over into Europe. And you see the same thing. It would cause the Altai floods. This would cause the flooding here. This is about 30% coverage. Right now, we're down to about 5%, 3 to 8, depending on the source. So, Ice Age. How do you get ice? If I wanted to make ice, I would need cold, because if it's not cold, it's just water. And I would need water. I need cold and water. That's how you make ice. It's high-level science stuff. If you want to make ice, you got to have cold, below 32, and water. It's a great combination to make ice. Works every time. So we have the cold, maybe. I don't know where they say the cold came from, but where did the water come from? Well, where did the water come from? We are currently in an ice age that has been going on for almost 3 million years. The ice sheets, I asked where it came from. I didn't ask your take on how old it was. The pretty simple question. Where cis the water, supposed to be dead, but DNS are close. Where cis the water come from? And where did it come from? 3 million years. Don't forget. What is that thing that Goebbels said? Say something enough times, it'll become true or something like that. 3 million years. That's not what I asked. Where did the water come from? 3 million years. No, you're evading the question. Is where, not when. The Ice Age, they do so much I give them a hard time. They do magic. This is why they have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's just a song and dance man, if you don't know that. He was like a theatric, whatever, college degree holder, whatever that would be. What would that be? Theatrician, theaterician. He got like a degree in it, or a song and dance, and that's what he does. He just got his top hat. He's like, bam, 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 and you like watch him on all of his interviews. It's like teeny bit of science, and then this whole thing, kind of like what I do, because I'm like the anti Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like him and I are like, we're like, I can't wait to debate him. We're gonna do the same song and dance, but mine's gonna be about the Bible, and his is gonna be about how not the Bible. It's gonna be great. Okay, here comes the song and dance. Where did the water come from? We're currently in an ice age. It's been going on for almost 3 million, billion, trillion, zillion years. The ice sheets became so tall, a lot of adjectives, so tall. It's like science Mad Libs, over a very long time. I asked where. I didn't ask when. I didn't even ask how long or how. I just asked where. Hey, Google, where did the water come from? Google gets on its Neil deGrasse Tyson top hat. Well, here's the thing, kids. 45 billion years ago, the ice sheets became... Where did the ice sheets become from? That's the question. The ice sheets became so... Stop. Okay. When you learn their thing, it's really funny. It's really silly how they do this. Currently in Ice Age, 3 million years, the ice sheets became so tall over a very long time as snowfall accumulation exceeded the rate of melting. All right. So for a very long time, it snowed more than it melted. This sounds reasonable. Where did the snow come from? The water came from the oceans. Was evaporated by the sun. Oh, I didn't realize this was Cora. Sorry. That's why it was so bad. But still, I'm sure this guy's a scientific popularizer. He's probably... Actually, I'm going to see who he is. I bet you he's a scientist. I bet you he's a meteorologist. Let's look. Going off the cuff here. David Johnson. Well, that didn't work out as well as I would have liked, but most of these guys are actually like scientists who like to get on their archaeologic studies. They like to, those are the people that research are level 6, level 2, whatever that is. Anyways, let's go to something more valid. Still funny though. Makes more sense why it was so song and dancey. The USGS, formed by Henry Fairfield Osborn, I believe. one of the eugenicists. It's in my Otobenga video. They formed the national parks, Madison Grant. They had the U.S. Geologic, Henry Fairfield Osborn, I believe. Anyways, he was the head. That's who started eugenicists pushing the theory of evolution. Where did the Ice Age come from? During cold climate intervals, known as glacial epochs or ice ages, sea level falls because of a shift in the global hydrologic cycle. Water is evaporated from the oceans and stored on the continents as large ice sheets and expanded ice caps, ice fields, and mountain glaciers. Okay, great. Water comes from the ocean, dumps on the mountains. Easy, right? Over a very long time. Very long time. 3 million years. Snow more than it melts. Why? Doesn't happen now. Hasn't been happening. Matter of fact, the glaciers are retreating. Why isn't it happening now? What happened? Here's the one piece of science, which is just magic they gave you here. Sea level falls because of a shift in the global hydrologic cycle. You got to dig to find the actual science. The ocean's evaporated. They're just 400 feet of it. 400 feet of the ocean wrapped up on the mountains. Here's the water comes from up on the mountains. Go back to this picture. Water's in the oceans. Water's snow on the mountains. Why? Why? USGS? Because of a shift in the global hydrologic cycle. A shift. Like an event? Some cataclysmic, world-changing event? Would that be considered a shift? Would you call a flood a global hydrologic cycle shift? Let's look at how lake effect storms are formed.
And exactly how lake effect snow works. You need two main components. Obviously, you need a lake and you also need some cold air. But that lake, it needs to be warm, okay? So this is any city and this is a very warm lake. And what happens is you have this cold air mass that is blowing over the lake, okay? Now what happens is since the lake is warmer, it is actually going to warm that air mass from below. So what does warm air do? It wants to rise up. As it does that, it cools and condenses, blows over the city, and it just starts puking snow. Now, Jen mentioned how it can be in just that really thin band, maybe just a couple miles wide or even less.
Okay. So in Buffalo, New York, we just had that 60-inch snowstorm dump in the end of November. Crazy. How did that much snow happen? Well, it's really simple. The waters in the Great Lakes get warm. They're warmed up by the summer sun. Heat, hot. Water gets warm. Playing in the water, it's all good. Starts to cool down. Sun goes lower in the horizon. Starts to cool down. But water has an amazing energy retention property. Very implicit to us having any reality here, any life on this earth. Like life, I talked earlier about the Bible being infinitely fractal and representative of this reality. Jesus is the water, and he says that, but you have to drink the water. And we exist because of the sun and water, right? Jesus, the sun and the water. So there's this whole idea that water has this dynamic property. We drink it, we're made of it, we wash with it, it makes us clean, and it actually takes all the energy of the sun and stores it to keep us in a climate-controlled area as well. Very important. You need an entire planet covered in water to have any chance of having life, which is what we have, and we've never seen anywhere else. So anyways, water, if you did a science experiment and you heat it up in a microwave, earth, square chunk of turf, your divot from golf, you heat up in the microwave and you heat up the equal weight in water, you take them out, the earth is going to cool very quickly and the water is going to retain that heat for many, many, many minutes because it's an energy storage device. Probably information-based. There's like ideas of water maybe having memory and some other really cool studies that we can get into there. But anyways, the water of the Great Lakes is storing all of this energy, okay? And now you have one of these Arctic blasts or these, pressure change storms where the cold air from the North Pole or whatever from Canada, northern Canada, rips down. So now this really cold air hits the warm water and you get evaporation. And you get this precipitation, and it ends up becoming a conveyor belt of snow. I covered it in my video. They called it a fire hose. And if you watch I didn't pull up the thing, but if you watch the snowstorm in Buffalo, it just was this steady storm as the energy from the water was being released and hitting the cold air, and causing this. So now you have this idea with the global flood that the guy said earlier in the TikTok question, what about the heat problem? I understand that it heated the earth. You had subducting and moving and mashing and friction. We don't know how the temperature of the water coming out. We don't know if there was a cold, seems like there was some sort of rush of cold air that came in from the north. We have woolly mammoths flash frozen with middle of like chomping tropical veggies or flowers or whatever. Probably not veggies. Do mammoths eat veggies? Nobody knows. I doubt that. Eating their little, mammoth flowers, and they're like frozen, and they've got like the stuff still in their belly. So they were in a tropical climate, then they were freezing. What happened? Did the firmament get damaged? Did whatever, however this cold air rushed in? I imagine there's a natural explanation. But then what you would have had is a cold air meeting the warmed up waters of the oceans. So it said earlier, a shift in the global hydrologic cycle, like warm water in the ocean, heated water. I don't know, what's the maximum temperature fish can be in? A lot of fish died, probably most of them, or a huge amount of them. Water heats, some sort of cold air induction, whatever's happening with that. And even maybe it didn't even have to be that cold, although I do think it was. It was colder than the warm oceans. So you get all this evaporation. So basically you get this lake effect storm that we just watched on this. I'm going to mute her really quick so she wouldn't talk over me. But okay, so you have the cold air over the warm water, and it causes you can see the evaporation obviously coming up and then getting blown over. And now that stored energy is in the form of snow, and it dumps out. So look at, here comes the snow, and it's going into the town, and that's how you get a Buffalo Lake effect storm. So back to these pictures. Where did the ice come from? Well, it came from the oceans. Evaporated from the oceans and stored in continents. And how? A shift in the global hydrologic cycle. There's something called the Milakovic cycle that they try to induce, which is this idea that the wobble of the sun, I can't think of the name, but the earth wobbles over here and it got really cold, then it got warm. It's like they have all these things, but they have no actual working model for where the ice age came from. It's really surprising. Like they say in the USGS, it was a global hydrologic cycle shift. We don't know what it was. We have no idea. Well, a flood would make sense. And again, looking at all the things, the history and the geology and the paleontology and the meteorology, they all fit together. And it's like, oh, we don't know how this happened. We don't know why the oceans just puked up 400 feet of their total amount of water onto the ocean, onto the top of the northern hemisphere. We don't know why that happened, but global lake effect storm caused by heated waters in the ocean, potentially combined with cool air coming in. Global lake effect storm. On a global level, that could do that. Okay. Let's close these guys out. Now, I'm going to try and wrap paleontology as quickly as possible. We're an hour and a half in. It's probably about 30 minutes. If you guys missed this, you can go watch the YouTube replay. After this is done, I'm going to go to TikTok for a Q&A after party. The number one evidence, in my opinion, and I'm not a geologist. I'm not a scientist. I'm a citizen, amateur researcher of science, journalist of science. I'm a science popularizer, like Bill Nye, and so he's not a scientist either. So we have one thing in common, literally one thing in common. Geology is interesting me more as I research this, but there's so much to it. I got my buddy Dan. We're going to be doing a debate with Planet Peterson coming up. Dan's kind of my resident intelligent design geologist. There's folded mountains and cross bedding and all kind of other things that point to this too, but paleontology is, in my opinion, I mean, all of these are very important. The geology is really important, but the paleontology is this theory be damned at this. Like, this is the damning thing. And I don't mean to say that like in any kind of cussing kind of way, but this is the most damning evidence. This would be the thing that damns this theory. That was a pun. That's what I meant. Damn. Hot damn. Okay, here we go. How are fossils formed? This is good stuff here. Okay, before I get into the fossils forming, I'm going to show you some videos. But their story is so bad and is not at all congruent or consistent with the data and is falling apart. It's just in chunks, just chunks of its flesh, just falling off. Like it's a zombie story at this point. It's a joke that it's like, it's really silly that anybody believes what they say. Because when something dies, it's immediately scavenged. Okay? Fully articulated fossils are a major problem because they have to be rapidly encased in basically mud or sand. I mean, you can do volcanic stuff and amber. There's a couple other ways, but largely the ones we find are fully articulated and they're in a dying pose and they're fully rapidly buried. Like sounds exactly like what would happen if something like an animal got washed in a huge tsunami of mud. And they need this, and they're going to explain this, and their animations and their way of telling it. I hope you laugh with me on this. So the first thing I want to show you is what happens actually when an animal dies. A little bit graphic, not too bad, but this is about scavengers. God created a form, Roombas, I would say. I got kind of a weird take. I think animals are basically NPCs. God forgive me. I think they're programmed to basically fulfill a niche. They're part of the food chain, and they do things like the servant animals, like a service animal, like a beast of burden, and horses and ox and all these things, chickens and all the things that we need. But they basically have their own niche and their own very specific design, and the scavengers are phenomenal. And what scavengers do, something dies and it's normally a bad thing. Sometimes they die of natural causes, sometimes it's disease, sometimes it's like a bird flu kind of thing, or like some of these viruses and stuff come from monkeys and birds and stuff and get into the humans. So like animals are pretty tough, and them dying just in the open is kind of a problem. So there's this whole group of organisms that God created, I believe, to go and basically deconstruct the biologic organic material. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. And this process disarticulates almost always, because they're ripping off limbs, scatters them around, and eviscerates them basically. And then there's even like bone-eating worms, especially in the sea. There's fungi and all these things. They just you don't get there's a possibility that basically every fossil we have is related to the flood. Like this is like we don't get flood formations. Things die and they don't become fossils. They just don't become fossils unless they're rapidly covered, and they're covered all over the world and fully articulated. And we're going to go on that for a second, but I want you to watch what these scavengers do. Oh, and before I do, God commands us very specifically of what animals we can eat and what animals are unclean, and basically the scavengers are the unclean ones. It doesn't say that in the Bible because it's like he doesn't need to explain the scientific niche. He's like, if it's got this certain foot and does this thing and does this, don't eat it. People are like, but I want to eat it. It's like, don't. Well, it turns out that they're totally ingesting and consuming and processing toxins, and they have unbelievable voracious stomach acids and this wicked immune systems. They can just eat anything, like anthrax and rotten flesh or whatever, and they're just fine. But then we eat them, and guess what? We get that. Parasites, etc. So vote for the Bible. God says don't eat it. People are like, but I want to eat it. It's like, oh, don't eat those things because they have a very specific niche, and they're basically Roombas, and they're cleaning things up. And you don't eat them because whatever they eat, they're not. Them's not for eating. Okay. Watch the scavengers.
Various animals are classed as scavengers. Any animal that feeds on decaying organic matter. Various animals are classed as scavengers. Birds, such as vultures, crows, and seagulls. Mammals, like hyenas, coyotes, raccoons, and foxes. Sea creatures, including eels, crabs, and lobsters. And insects, like cockroaches and blowflies. Many of them, like hyenas, will also hunt when given the chance. And likewise, some predators such as lions and wolves will engage in scavenging behavior if no other food is available. However, this is usually a last resort. Most animals require essential nutrients from specific sources and simply can't be that flexible in their diets. A scavenger, on the other hand, is used to eating a wide variety of foods. In urban environments particularly, this can literally include refuse.
whatever. Scavengers scavenge, and then the vultures are awesome. Actually, I have like a new respect for vultures after the research I did. But they're going to scavenge anything. Like something dies, and they're going to eat it, and they're going to disarticulate it. So when something dies, it's going to be scavenged, and then it's going to be decomposed, and it's not going to ever become a fossil. So how are fossils formed? Watch this.
Much of what we understand about evolution comes from studying fossils, so they are really important. But how do they form? When animals or plants die, their remains usually decay to nothing. It is only if the conditions are right that they can be preserved as fossils. The best way to create a fossil is to trap and quickly bury a dead organism. The dead remains of animals and plants that fall to the river or sea floors get covered in layers of sediment. Over time, this sediment sinks, as it is buried deeper by increasing layers. Meanwhile, minerals permeate through the sediment.
Okay, that's all I can handle. So, remember earlier with the whole 3 million years? Listen to what this says initially.
What we understand about evolution comes from studying fossils.
Fossils are super important. Fossils are how we prove that the flood didn't happen. Fossils are how we disprove the Bible. Yeah. Very important that we have them. How are they formed? In a flood. Don't worry about that. Yes, it dies and it has to be rapidly buried. So in this ridiculous story, in his story, he's got a stegosaurus.
So they are really important. But how do they form? When animals or plants die, their remains usually decay to nothing. It is only if the conditions are right that they can be preserved as fossils. The best way to create a fossil is to trap and quickly bury a dead organism. The dead remains of animals and plants that fall to the river or sea floors get covered in layers of sediment.
How does it happen again? It's the ones that die and then fall to a river or sea floor. Yep. So the stegosaurus died in a jet skiing accident? How in the hell did the stegosaurus die and then end up in a lake? Or a river? Maybe that's a one-off. Yeah, it's a bad example. Maybe I got it wrong. Let's watch a little bit more of this. Natural History
Millions
Museum.
of years ago.
Natural History Museum. Full propaganda. These yahoos, American Natural History Museum, the Royal Society, the Smithsonian, fully funded by J.P. Morgan. Watch my videos on the X Club. Just elite money proving to people that we come from animals. That's all it is. Watch this. But how do you start this? How do dinosaur fossils form? Can you tell me that? That's what I want to know. How do they form? Natural History Museum. Tell me.
Millions of years ago.
Oh. When. Start with the when. I asked how.
Millions of years ago, this dinosaur was going about his normal daily life.
Playing tennis. Taking a dinosaur dump.
But his day went from good to bad.
Yep,
Then
died of
really
natural
bad.
causes.
After he died, other dinosaurs ate him.
Right.
And
True.
the rest of his skin and muscles rotted away, leaving just his bones.
Then what happened? Tell me. Millions of years ago, dinosaur went to the bathroom and then died. Then the scavengers did the thing. Except for they didn't tear it apart. They left it perfectly in good shape. But okay, then what happened?
Were quickly buried by mud. Over millions of years, more layers
Millions of
landed
years
on
ago.
top.
We gotta do a drinking game. Millions of years. Yep, and then more.
Mud, sand, and
Right. Question, teacher, Natural History Museum professor of propaganda. Where did the mud come from?
bones. These were quickly buried by mud.
Just gonna leave that one out, huh? Dinosaur, playing tennis, going to the bathroom, died, got scavenged. I'm tracking. This whole story's checking out so far. Dino tennis, dino toilet, dino newspaper, bad branch, dead. Got it. I'm following. Okay, what happens next?
These were quickly buried by mud.
That. Let's go over that part again. I feel like in their explanation, they definitely considered, they talked about the tennis. They talked about the million years. And then, how did this happen? Well, millions of years ago, then that happened. See, they can't tell the story without the mud because it's the only way that this would happen. But they can't say that a giant flood all over the world killed everything that we find, every fossil, because that sounds like a J. Harlan Brett's rapid animal burying global event, aka a flood. They don't care. Where'd the mud come from? I got a question. I got the million-year part. Where'd the mud come from? Maybe that's a one-off. Hey, we got a Stegosaurus, died on the jet ski. We got the, dino that died after, had a heart attack. SADS, sudden adult dinosaur death. Double D, sudden death dinosaur death syndrome. Just died. And then the mud. We're just going to leave that out. Okay, so we got 2 stories. Let's check the third story. Well, let's maybe there's got to be better.
Landed
They've got
on top.
They've got all the king's horses and all the king's men telling this story for hundreds of years. They have to have something better than this. They have to. Look, there it is. It's in the rock. Gets up to the top. Something pushed it up. We don't know what. Plate tectonics, easy stuff. Just whatever. They got to have a better story. So maybe this is just a one-off. Let's keep going.
Someone will find one. Nearly all of the fossils we find, around 99%, are from marine animals.
Interesting.
Such as shellfish and sharks.
I wonder why that would
This
happen.
is because they lived in the sea, where sand or mud could bury their remains quickly after they died.
I gotta look this up. See, this is why it happened there, because they were rapidly buried. Fish eating fish fossil. Yep. There it is. It's fish eating a fish. Buried. Oh, of course, this is alarmy. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. Let's go back to the story. Let's see if we're tracking with the story here. This is why did it happen more in the ocean?
Such as shellfish and sharks. This is because they lived in the sea, where sand or mud could bury their remains quickly after they died.
Right, after they died. Or while they were eating. You know what, though? It could be both. It could be either. It could be that they were swimming along, and then they died, and then the sea ate them up, right? Because that happens. Except for, that doesn't happen. That actually doesn't happen at all. In the sea, let's see if I can find this here. Top 5 video playlist. Come on, I don't want to be in history. Here we go, top 5. What actually happens here is, it's called whale falls. The creepy creatures that eat the whales. So what actually happens when... They're very excited about that. I promise that's just people being excited about disgusting fish consummation by... no, it's not consummation. Being consumed by other fishes. There's the bone-eating worms. So this is... it's called a whale fall. And when a whale dies and falls to the floor... it's actually an ecosystem for weeks. All of the things, the squids and the octopuses and the lobsters and all these things, all the bottom dwellers that we're not supposed to eat, go and eat them all. They eat it all the way down. Look at it, they clean it out all the way, and then there's bone-eating worms that are on the bones that eat the worms, and they totally eat it. They totally annihilate it. Look at that. These guys are all fat. Like, oh, I'm so full off of whale carcass, because it's just protein to them. It's just energy. It's just information. So, I got more. They died. I got their energy. So see how the bones are deteriorating? Nope, they don't die, okay? And sit there at the bottom and hang out. They die in the mud event, okay? It's Whatever. If you want to believe sometimes they die rapidly, while they're eating, while they're giving birth, if you want to believe that, fine. But the story that they just told you, this is for kids, by the way. You know how much that pisses me off? This is for kids. This is for kids. How does it happen again?
They lived in the sea, where sand or mud could bury their remains quickly after they died.
This is why I say all the time that their theory isn't consistent with the data and with reality, okay? When a fish dies, it is going to be scavenged every time, unless it's a tsunami, a wave of mud. That's the only way. So now, like, tell the truth. Don't you want to live in a world where the Natural History Museum tells the truth? They go, yeah, they're in the water and they're swimming along and a huge wave of mud eats them, and that's how we get them. That's what happened. Nope. The Stegosaurus dies on the jet ski, ends up in a river, falls down, it's covered. The dinosaur dies, it falls down, and then mud comes from wherever. Just comes in and gets him. And then the fish, they die, and they fall to the ground, and then eventually wind, sand, ocean wind covers them up. And then forever. This is why I'm like so fiery and pissed off, and why I'm so glad to be on the right side of history. This is lie, after misinformation, after pseudoscience, after lie, after bias, after just wrong. This whole theory. And this is just it. Like, I could do the same thing on the theory of evolution. I've done it on the Big Bang. We're going to keep doing these. You'll find the consistency on all of it. It's nothing that makes sense. It's some slight version of, like, we have fossils, it proves evolution. It's like, no, it doesn't prove evolution. Oh, we have DNA, that proves evolution. No, it doesn't. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. It destroys the theory. There's no idea how life happened. It's just the whole thing. But the truth doesn't matter. Because if you tell the truth, they kill you. Or ruin your career. Anyways, this gets better.
But dinosaurs live on land.
Okay.
So how do they get buried so quickly? Most dinosaur fossils we find belong...
Wait, they actually asked a question. So you're talking about the land ones. This is the same video. Okay, so the fish die.
But dinosaurs live on land. So how do they get buried so quickly?
Great question.
Most dinosaur fossils we find belong to animals that were living near to a lake or a river. They died, and a short while later the area flooded, covering their remains in mud and silt. Occasionally...
Okay, so it was a flood. Look at that. 2.5 minutes in. Millions of years, evolution, whatever, all these things. It is a flood. Yep. Yep, literally. I want you to know this. They literally concede that every flood, or every fossil, was formed in a flood. Or there's some that happens like volcanoes, like very, very seldom in amber. But yeah, it's a flood. But what kind of flood? What? Here's their order of events. This is what they literally believe, okay? Either the flood came down the river and the dinosaurs were like, I could swim that. I got this. Wrong. Right? That's like one version. When the truth is, animals have a very strong intuition about natural disasters. Very strong. I would say it's in their programming. They're like, nobody knows how. How did they know that was coming? Why is the dog barking before the earthquake? Nobody knows. Because they're programmed. They have this, like, whatever, intuition. It's like download patches. They're like, gotta go. Water. We gotta get here. Because it's a river. And rivers are finite. And I can go because I'm an animal. Here I go. I'm going to get away from the water. So one version is like, I got this. I was wrong, right? No animal instinct, no life instinct. They just get rapidly buried. The other one, what they really like, is that they just die and they're not scavenged, or maybe they just got the bones. They left the bones. Forget all the other things. Just died. And then the flood came, which is a better story for them because they're not running in this situation. Because if there was a flood coming, they would be running, which we also have evidence of that. So they like this version better. Well, so here's what happens, kids. Who cares if I'm lying to you? At least it's not the Bible. Who cares if I'm indoctrinating you? At least it's not religious indoctrination. So here's what they say. The thing dies, natural causes, partially scavenged, and then a flood came. So it was a flood. Okay, just a random bad luck fossil flood. This gets better.
Something more dramatic happened. Occasionally, something more dramatic happened. In one example, two dinosaurs, Protoceratops and Velociraptor, were fighting in the desert. They were mid-battle when, suddenly, a sand dune collapsed on top of them. Their fossils show them frozen in their fighting poses.
Can you imagine if we had one of these BS stories about creation and we told the atheists we wanted to play it in school, the Natural History Museum? The dinosaurs were fighting and a sand dune fell on their head. You know, falling sand dune mountains things. You know how that goes? It's an old story in the book. Fighting dinos. When they do their training, they fight. They're like, okay, left paw, left hook, whatever the dinosaurs have. Dino arm, right dino arm. Watch out for the sand dune collapse falling on your head. Got to be prepared. They weren't prepared. That's why we told them we had to train. They didn't train. They were fighting, and a sand dune fell out of the sky onto their head. That is a great unconformity.
Their fossils, something more dramatic happened. In one example, two dinosaurs, Protoceratops and Velociraptor, were fighting in the desert. They were mid-battle when, suddenly, a sand dune collapsed on top of them. Their fossils show them frozen in their fighting poses.
What if they told the story of I just showed it without that was just me looking at it. Hopefully you heard it at least. Anyways, looking at it, I was not impressed. What if they were like, and then sometimes they're fighting and a huge wave of mud, a giant 70 mile an hour, 100 mile an hour tsunami wave engulfed them in their fight. That'd be weird, right? That would sound like a flood. Okay. Hopefully you heard it when I was playing it there. I'm going to watch the sand dune fall on his head, and then I'm going to show you one last ridiculous story, and then we're going to break the proprietary news and then try and wrap this thing up.
They were mid-battle when, suddenly, a sand dune collapsed on top of them. Their fossils show them frozen in their fighting poses. In another tragic example, the feathered dinosaur Sittipati was sitting on its nest of eggs when a sandstorm blew in and covered it. Fossils like this, from animals that were alive when they were buried, are really rare. It's not just bones that turn into fossils.
Can't get off these eggs. These animals have very little instinct to want to live. It was that's the story they just told you. She was sitting on her eggs and a sandstorm. Sand dune collapsed. Sandstorm, great unconformities, jet skiing, stegosaurus, mud from nowhere. This is why, if you guys, if you're on TikTok or if you're on YouTube and you came over from TikTok and you see why, like, I don't have every answer for apologetics. I'm working on it. We've been doing it for a year full time now. God willing, we'll just continue to aggregate better and better arguments like AI. AI is getting better. It's machine learning. I'm human learning. We're going to keep tearing these things down because it's the same ridiculous story in cosmology with the expanding universe accelerating and where it came from and just all of it, abiogenesis, no positive formation, information mutations, and we're only deleterious largely, and it's more genetically entropically disintegrating. It's like their whole story is just a mish of this. So it's like I'm like, it's a fairy tale. People are like, oh, it's the like you haven't done the research. You don't even know, but it's garbage. Okay. It's weird that that's doing that, but we're doing it a different way. I'm going to show you a thing here to wrap. This is the proprietary thing. It's going to take me about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes to go through this. I found this in my research because there's something very anomalous. Actually, I'm going to do this first. I'll do a quick fact check before I read this next thing. Everybody loves the good fact check, right? Who doesn't love a good fact check? You like a good fact check on TikTok? You like a good fact check on YouTube? Thank God for the fact checkers, for the arbiters of truth. Nothing fishy nothing fishy about ancient marine fossils on Everest. This was May of 2021. A post by a Facebook user in Australia claims scientists studying Mount Everest have found fossilized fish skeletons, which are proof the Earth previously experienced a great flood. Stupid. Why would fish on top of Mount Everest prove anything like that? It wouldn't. A meme included in the post features an image of a fossilized fish and a text that reads, Scientists that are studying the peak of Mount Everest have found skeletons of fish that have been stuck in the rock. They believe this proof is water has reached this height in the past, which proves the Earth was once flooded. I think that's incorrect. I think that the mountain wasn't as tall as it is now. It was formed in the flood. But anyways, partially correct. At the time of the writing, the May 8th post had been viewed by more than 41,000 times and shared nearly 300 times. I always see these and I'm like, I wonder how much we're getting reported. I think the flood video has like 140,000 views and 1,000 shares or something. I can't wait to find myself on one of these fact checks. The analysis. What do the arbiters of truth say? Clearly it doesn't fit. While their post claims the fossils on Everest are evidence of global flooding, scientists say they're actually proof of the Earth's constant change. It's actually proof. It's like fossils are proof of evolution. Fossils on top of Mount Everest is proof there wasn't a flood. See how this works? I've been calling it anti-truth. It actually proves that there wasn't a global flood. But it's what we exactly expected to see was fish on the... We found a whale in the Himalayas. It's exactly what we expected to see. This proves that there wasn't a global flood because the whale was on top of the mountain, the highest mountain in the world. See? Science. Let's fact check it. Really put this thing to bed. This theory holds that the Earth's outer crust is formed by plates which slowly over a molten layer of the planet's material. Mountains are formed by collision of the two plates, but not fast. Hey, that would be catastrophic. We only do uniform tears. It's very slow crashing. It's a slow crash. It's not fast crash. If we do like it crashed, just not fast, because that would sound like a cataclysm. Which slowly created the rock formations over millions of years. And see, what happened is it died, right? And it was fossilized by not mud, no scavengers, nothing. And then later it came up and it was there because of that. It's easy. Certainly wasn't a global flood. Certainly wasn't rapidly buried. None of that stuff. Is it true that remnants of ancient sea life have been found fossilized on Everest, the world's highest point above sea level? Oh, it is true. It is true. Yep. These include fragments of extinct and existing marine animals. Interesting that there'd be existing ones, including trilobites, these guys, and crinoids, which means that there's living fossils up there. That's a good one for them. Although all three are vertebrates, not fish. Samples collected on the mountain also contain parts of the extinct prehistoric Conodontus, thought to be distantly related to the modern hagfish. Hagfish. You're a hagfish. I think that's a good slight for someone. Some of the fossils from Everest were first collected during the ill-fated climbing expedition of George Malloy and Andrew Irvine. Imagine that. They were like, holy Moses, we're on Everest and there's a fish up here. What? I guess the Bible's true. At least they got that right before they died. That probably... Okay, Mallory and Irving perished. Oh, they did die. And their summit. But fossils collected by these guys, last person to see them, included many limestone samples. Anyways, they also collected this, blah, blah, blah. So how did they get up there? University of Wollongong geologist Dr. Solomon Buckman, who has extensively studied the Himalayas, told the AAV fact check the memes claim Everest had fossils. So they actually called about it. It was misleading. The fossils recorded around Mount Everest are Ordovician in age. That is about 420 million years ago. Explain that. It's definitely 420 million years. That's why time. And formed under the ocean, under the northern margin of India, when it was still attached to the Western Australia as part of the supercontinent Gondwana. About 130 million years ago, India drifted away from Gondwana, drifted northwards until it collided with Eurasia. This collision of continents resulted in massive uplift of the crust, and the fossiliferous sedimentary rocks that formed part of the northern India were thrust upward by these colossal tectonic forces. These fossils are now found on top of Mount Everest. NASA! NASA knows. NASA's got to get in here too, because nobody's better at explaining the fossils on the highest mountains than the National Aeronautic and Space Agency. Am I right? Oh, NASA notes. Nothing fishy about NASA commenting on this. that the presence of limestone and marine fossils lifted from the ocean shallow seabed to the top of the Himalayas was once the main piece of evidence cited to advance the idea of plate tectonics when it was first proposed. Okay, the phenomenon of high-altitude fossils isn't unique to the Asian mountain range. Whale fossils and evidence of other marine fossils have been found high in the Andes, for example. The image of the fossilized fish included in the meme isn't actually taken from that. Blah, blah, blah. The meme's image has been used elsewhere as a generic illustration. The idea of the presence of marine fossils in mountains proves the earth was once flooded has been associated with literal readings of the biblical story of Noah and the flood, including the book of Genesis. Which means that definitely false, right? However, that account flies in the face of scientific evidence. Yeah. Remember, everybody, millions and millions and millions of years, and you can't trust the Bible. And science flies in the face of the Bible. Remember that. It's like rule number one of science. Himalayas were formed millions of years before the first humans appeared on Earth. Also worth noting, many of the fossils of the Himalayas are of long extinct species. Yes, many that would have died in the flood. The verdict. While marine fossils haven't indeed been found around Mount Everest, scientists do not say they are proof of the Earth once being flooded. Instead, they support the idea of... it proves their theory. With the presence of ancient sedimentary rock and the marine life evidence, parts of the mountain were once sea floor. False. Fact check, false. Content that has no basis in fact. And we know they're certified because they are an accredited member of the International Fact-Checking Network. I need to join that organization. I'm sure they'd love me. Okay. Watch this. This is going to be the wrap on the paleontology.
The Sahara Desert is home to some of the world's most isolated dinosaur bones. One recent huge find has sparked dreams of a world-class exhibition in Niger.
Okay.
Niger has long boasted fossil riches.
They're not just on the mountains. They're also in the desert. Yep. Dinosaurs in the desert. Whales in the desert. Sharks in the desert. Megalodons in the desert. They're all in the desert too. But, just further proof of their theory. Definitely not proof of a flood. Watch where this goes.
Desert covers 2/3 of the country. There are countless bones poking through the ground. But most of the dinosaurs found here go to museums in Europe or North America.
Wait. Countless dinosaur bones poking out of the ground.
Dinosaurs found here go to museums in Europe or North America. Fossil riches. Desert covers 2/3 of the country. There are countless bones poking through the ground. But most of the dinosaurs found here go to museums in Europe or North America for reasons practical and frustrating.
Countless.
Wealthier nations offer temperature-controlled rooms that prevent skeletons from crumbling. Serino has collected hundreds of fossils from the country over the years. They're stored at his lab in Chicago. He plans to catalog the bones and return them to Niger.
I've come to Niger because it's got the greatest slice of the Sahara, the greatest expanse, the greatest desert, the greatest hunting ground for dinosaurs and, in fact, ancient humans. It's like being on another planet.
Serino's film crew shot this footage as his team cataloged hundreds of bones in Niger over a series of trips in 2018 and 2019. Digging out the dinosaur in Niger involves a lot of time, communication, and patience. Here, Serino and his team find the backbone edges of a new long-necked dinosaur. They're peeking out from the rocky surface that entombed them some 170 million years ago.
In the desert, they have all of the dinosaur and ancient humans. And they're just sticking out of the ground. They're sticking out of the ground. They're sticking out of the ground. They look like rocks. Nope, they're dinosaur bones, dinosaur fossils. Yep. 170 million years old. Right there. 170 million year old. Look at that. Just sticking out of the ground. This was in 2022. Actually, this was right before COVID. It's 2019, and they came back in 2022.
As a paleontologist, I dug up dinosaurs, and you get these weird creatures. There's a sort of a detachment. The weirder, the better. The more fearsome, the better. And then I came across a human graveyard, and I realized this is my species. This is my story.
Here's Serino and his team excavate a teenager from the Green Sahara site called Gobero in Niger. People who existed here 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, before the pyramids were built, lived alongside a lake filled with crocodiles, hippos, and elephants.
When I found this, I lost it. I can't even, you guys. Watch this. They found the dinosaur bones, 170 million years, over here. And they found the human fossilized bones right over here. Listen to the time frame.
Here, Sereno and his team excavate a teenager from the Green Sahara site called Gobero in Niger. People who existed here 5,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Fossilized humans, 5 to 10,000 years ago. That's just about checks out. Let's see the Bible according to the Septuagint. The flood was 5,200 years ago. Earth was created 7,500 years ago. So we got the dinosaurs over here, 170 million years old. And then we got the humans over here. Well, they can't be 170 million years old. Anybody want to guess why? Because it doesn't fit their theory. Can't have an 170 million year old human being. It's a more recent thing. A couple 100,000 years. According to mitochondrial Eve, you get all the Lucy's and stuff, whatever they want to say. Can't have no 170 million year old human. Maybe it's because they're really far away. Maybe there was like an event over here that caused the 5 to 7,000 year old humans to be actually lower. If you look, the humans are actually lower. If you look at this, that human, they had to dig down to get to that human. Look, it was like 8 inches or 10 inches or a foot. The dinosaurs are sticking out. So if your plan is stratigraphy, if your plan is to say the older thing is deeper and the more recent thing is higher, you got a problem because the humans are actually lower than the dinosaurs, right? Well, maybe it's a proximity issue. Maybe one is over by a lake and the other is over by something else. Well, I did a little diving for you all. That's a dinosaur death pose, which I totally meant to cover and didn't. This is the guy. You guys look into it. Paul Sereno. He just went back there this last year. I'm going to break this on TikTok here pretty soon. This is the map of the different things that he's doing. This is where they're finding these dinosaurs. One place is in Erhazer, Niger. Another place is in Gobero. So this is Agaharis, Niger, which is this is the Gobero site. See Gobero right here. This is Gobero, okay? And this is Arahazer. It needs to be IRH. IRHAZER. I want to make sure I'm fully transparent here. IRHAZER. What was it? IRHAZER. Yeah, okay. IRHAZER. My phone died. That's a bummer. Zoom into it. It's going to take me a second to get to it. How do I get here? Yeah, Ira Harzer. So that's the place, Ira Harzer. Then we go to satellites. I should have just left it where it was. Dang old man. Well, it's going to take me a second to get it right. Oh, I'm all the way back over here. How do I do it? Anyways, this is the place in there, and I don't know why it's not giving me the exact place. This is it here. Anyways, it's right over here. What sucks is earlier I had like the exact coordinates. But okay, Gobero is here and Ira Harzer is over here. And it's their dig site. So If you guys want, email me and I'll give you the exact coordinates. It's for whatever happened there. It got moved off and I can't find it. Ira Harzer is right here. And Gobero is right here. And if you look at your scale down here of 20 miles, I estimate that it's 60 miles away. So what you have is in Ira Harzer, you have dinosaurs sticking out of the mud, out of the dirt. And in Gobero, you have humans just slightly below the mud, 5 to 7,000, 5 to 10,000 years old. Researching this, there's no radiometric dating done. There's no explanation for how they got the 170 million years for the dinosaur other than it's the official narrative. The official narrative is that dinosaurs are 100, they died out 150 million years ago, and we know that for certain. Soft tissue and dinosaurs, soft tissue and fossils be damned. And we know for a fact that the humans in Gobero at 5 to 7,000 years old. 5 to 10,000 years old. They're certainly not 170 million years old. So the question to me is, if you have dinosaur fossils sticking out of the turf, out of the soil, and you have a human fossil on the other side of that little mountain, buried a little bit lower, and you have no way to date them because this rock at the top, that it's the same layer. It's the same layer. It's the exact same layer. So you want to say wind over here, you want to say water over here. You can make up whatever you want to. But looking at this surface value, this dinosaur and this human died at the same time and were fossilized through the same process in the same layer of strata. And this happened last year, but just like Altai and these other things, no one's going to report on it. This is as cool. I got to look into it more. I just found this yesterday, a couple days ago. I'm going to dig more, but as of now, this is looking like potentially, and by the way, they are fossilized remains. If we actually look at the article, they're actually fossilized humans. Let's look here really quick. Most famous burial, 5,700 years old. That fits really well. Involves 3 skeletons, a woman facing 2 younger children. Can you get rid of this little picture, please? Why is this on here? Well, anyways. Just trying to find the part where it talks about them being fossils. These more recent fossils tell the story of a people that existed between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago. Back then, the Sahara Desert was green, supporting the Ice Age, supporting the Book of Job, supporting all the dispersions out of Sumeria and out of the Fertile Crescent. The evidence suggests a time of lakes teeming with 2-meter perch, as well as hippos, crocs, and human settlements. Human graveyard and thousands of artifacts. 2 cultures thrive for millennia as hunter-gatherers. The most famous burial. And there's information under here about it being fossils. I don't know why that got off the rails, but... Okay. Last thing I want to cover is the death pose, and then we're going to wrap up. Dinosaur death pose mystery. We talked earlier about how they died of natural causes, and then muds came out of nowhere and cleaned them up, whatever, made them fossils. This is dinosaurs dying out of asphyxiation, basically. Okay, let's see here. On occasions where an intact dinosaur skeleton is found, the dinosaur is often in position with his neck bending backwards, its mouth gaping open, and its tail sticking out. This unusual position is often referred to as the death pose. While no one knows for certain, how many times have we've covered that tonight a few times. No one knows how this could have happened. How did they end up in this position? The answer may lie with that liquid resource coming out of your tap. Many believe that large flooding swept up the dinosaurs, causing their deaths. This is Canadian Geographic. This isn't Answers in Genesis. If you didn't see it, there it is. Canadian Geographic, super secular site. Many believe large flooding swept up the dinosaurs, causing their deaths. In the throes of drowning, they end up in this unique pose that's typically associated with brain damage and asphyxiation. To support this theory, scientists in Utah submerged chickens. Don't suggest doing that. Some speculate water was a contributor to the pose, but only after death. Once immersed in water, the dinosaur vertebrae, which had a lot of stored energy supporting the long neck and tails, would arch in spine and death, creating a new pose. Some even believe the fossilized bones are evidence supporting the flood referenced in Genesis. While water may be the reason for the pose when dinosaur bones are found near areas of this is great. While water may be the reason for the pose when dinosaurs' bones are found near areas with abundant rivers and lakes, doubts still arise for bones found in arid landscapes. But the theory still works for dinosaurs traipsing through volcanic land where they've been suffocated in throes of death from falling ash rather than water. So yeah, basically the idea is, great, fine, they died in the river and they got their arch back and they died and whatever. Asphyxiated, couldn't breathe, they died. But in arid places, we don't know. Must have been water there. Water in the desert, water on Mount Everest seems like a bad idea. It seems like it's a flood. Let's just miss the whole thing. I'm going to cover more of the flood probably because I don't want to say it's just scratching the surface. We covered a pretty good amount. But I encourage you to share this with people who are interested in a 2.5 hour long lecture on the flood. I tried to wrap up a bunch of points all together. At the very base level of it, you have the control of information. You have people controlling what you believe about this reality. Non-scientific, I mean, it's scientific in as much as they can justify it with a version of science. That's all it is. But at the core of this is a intention to disprove the God of the Bible and the biblical narrative. From Hutton and Lyell to Darwin to Michio Kaku and Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson to the day. Nothing new under the sun. You bully people who don't believe it. The information, nobody has access to instrumentation. You just kind of tell them whatever, and if they question it, you're stupid. They crucify you, stick a thorn in your side, and that's what happens to the truth when it's told, unfortunately. Our history is the biblical history, and it's so exciting and so interesting. I've been saying that a lot on this show, if you've been watching this content for the last couple years. We can trust the book. And as we here in apologetics and other people break out of this matrix of thought control that is the academic secular mode, very exciting science is going to be done. When we can use the internet and whatever other things, and we can start to cobble together a new version, their story's going to fall apart very quickly. So in the meantime, keep doing your research. I've got a ton of content like this in my channel if you want to go check it out. We're going to try to focus on top 5 lists, top 5 reasons the Bible is a historical record, top 5 reasons Jesus was a real historical figure, top 5, etc., etc. Top 5 reasons the earth may be young. We've got some information on that that's really cool too. So look for us to continue to do that. We also have some videos, the Bereshit prophecy that we're going to be doing. We did the Jesus as a prophecy with the living bread teaching on here if you want to see that. So by the grace of God, we're able to do this full time because of amazing support. Thank you to the supporters of Voice of Reasons of the operation. We couldn't do it without you. If you're interested in supporting us, we have Patreon, Cash App, all those things. The goal is to continue this as very long as we can, and we've got a lot more work to do. So hopefully you found this exciting. Please do share it, and please go watch the top 5 video that I just posted, and please share that one. Let's try and get that to 1 million people. It's a condensed pop professional level version of what we just covered. So you can be like, watch the top 5 video, and then you can be like, watch the whole teaching. This is what my 1-minute videos are. It's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of research, and I try and drop them in the most succinct parts into a 1-minute piece, digestible for the masses. So thank you for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't. I know you're supposed to say that. Like the video, whatever, all that stuff. And God bless you. Thank you for being a part of this. End transmission.